This week on the season premiere of BuzzFeed Unsolved, we take a look at the Watcher, a stalker who was active as recently as 2017. Ugh.
What do you mean?
It's too soon for me.
Okay.
Normally we're covering like cases that are way back in the day. This guy's still out and about. He may watch this show, I don't know. And he could take a little
He probably will.
trip down to sunny California to visit his pals Ryan and Shane in the studio.
Or maybe he'll just be outside the studio, like.
Let's try to bury that down, put it in a box, put it aside.
You know what? I'm loving the energy this season. Let's hop right in. Let's do it.
Let's get into it.
Ooh.
In June 2014, Maria Broaddus, her husband Derek, and their 3 young children were getting ready to move into their new home, 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. The 6-bedroom, $1.3 million house was their dream home, located only a few blocks from Maria's childhood home in what was then the 30th safest town in America, according to the website Neighborhood Scout. A mere 3 days after closing the sale, before the Broaddus family had even moved in, a letter arrived at their new mailbox. The new owner was written by hand on the envelope in thick, clunky letters. The typed letter began, quote, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood," end quote. The letter, however, was anything but welcoming. It went on, quote, "How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time."
So it's like a Batman type. A silent guardian.
Yeah.
Just sounds like it's in his blood, you know?
It's a nice sentiment. If that sentiment, however, entails you doing some weird things, then maybe it's not a good family tradition.
Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one, end quote.
This is 2014 and he's writing like it's the 1800s here, like a little, it's a teaser.
I don't think that's what they're thinking.
Oh, well.
Also, like, I don't know how many houses you've moved into. I've moved into quite a few apartments. And even then, there's usually some kind of welcoming gift from like either the property owner, maybe even the neighbors will bring you cookies. If I walked into my new house and the first thing I saw was a letter that had this madness inside of it.
Nobody brought me cookies.
Nobody brought you cookies?
Actually, the first place I moved to in LA, somebody took a poop on the doorstep.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It was big.
The letter also mentioned specifics about the Broaddus family. Quote, "You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me," end quote. In a cursive font, the author typed the signature, "The Watcher."
What do you think now? Do you think your original thought may be a little bit off base?
Yeah, maybe. I want to give him creep points for this very fun, old-timey threat of "I'm going to steal your children."
True.
He's like the Wicked Witch.
He's making himself into a caricature of a villain, for sure.
After receiving the letter, the Broaddus family reached out to the couple that had sold them the house, John and Andrea Woods. The previous owners said they have never received any letter like that in 23 years of living in the house, except once, a few days before they moved out. The Woods family said they never felt watched in the more than 2 decades at 657 Boulevard, and in fact, rarely felt the need to lock their doors. While they thought the note they received was odd, they threw it out without much concern.
Well, this is kind of like when you buy a house and they didn't disclose to you before that either there were grisly murders inside of it or it's maybe haunted. And now you start having your chair stacked up on tables without you doing it.
This isn't something that the realtor, like if there's been a death they have to mention, they're not gonna be like, "It's beautiful, it's 2.5 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, there's a watcher and a beautiful pool in the back."
No big deal, have fun with that.
Still, the Woods family went with the Broaddus family to the police to report the letters. The police instructed the couples to not tell anyone about the intimidating mail, including their neighbors, who were all deemed suspects. 2 weeks later, with the Broaddus family still not moved in, a second letter arrived. Disturbingly, this message contained more details about the new owners, including their name, though misspelled, and their children's birth order and nicknames. The author also referenced seeing their daughter painting on an easel in an enclosed porch space, asking, quote, "Is she the artist in the family?" End quote.
You know what's the most disturbing about that to me is the nicknames. Because it's one thing to look up people's like birth names. The idea that they would have nicknames, pet names, means that it gives you the idea that they may be listening.
Do you think he bugged them somehow?
It's possible. Who knows what this guy's capable of? That's, I guess, the premise I'm trying to set up.
Okay.
All right.
Other parts read, quote, "It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better." End quote. After receiving this letter, Maria and Derek stopped bringing their children to the house and put a hold on their plans to move in. Several weeks later, a third letter arrived. Quote, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." End quote.
He's not good.
You don't like
Is
the way he
just
dances
calling
around?
the children young blood?
He calls them young blood, which like, in some cases, it's like kind of cool, like an older person comes
Hey,
like,
young
"Hey,
blood."
young
Yeah,
blood."
that's fun.
That's fun.
But
when
not
you're
a man who is
Young blood ruled the hallways of the house. He's talking about like them as little
kids
blood
running
bags.
around.
Little blood
Yeah,
bags.
Yeah,
It's not good.
However, by the end of the year, the investigation into who the Watcher was had stalled. There was no digital trail, no fingerprints, and no way to place someone at the scene of a crime. Meanwhile, the stress was taking a mental toll on the Broaddus family. Derek said he was experiencing depression. Maria's therapist said she was suffering from PTSD, and both were afflicted with levels of paranoia that made much of their daily life seem threatening. Only 6 months after the letters arrived, they decided to sell the house. Due to rumors about the property, however, buyers were hesitant. The Broaddus family sued the Woodses for failing to disclose the threatening letter they'd received. A local reporter found the complaint, which included excerpts from the letters. His small story became a viral sensation, causing a media circus to swirl around the house. Now totally unable to find a buyer, the Broaddus family considered selling the house to a developer who could tear it down and split the property into 2 homes. The 2 plots, however, would each be less than 3 feet too small for the mandated size of the neighborhood. The Broaddus family appealed the rule to the neighborhood planning board, who unanimously rejected the proposal.
What's the logic in splitting it up into 2 homes?
It's like when something really bad happens at a hotel and then they just rebrand. It's kind of what they're trying to do here.
I see.
Which is like understandable. I just think it's crazy that the neighborhood was like, 3 feet too small. Can't do that.
Hey, regulations are regulations. I get that.
That's baloney.
Maria was understandably upset, saying, quote, "This is my town. I grew up here. I came back. I chose to raise my kids here. You know what we've been through. You had the ability 2.5 years into a nightmare to make it a little better, and you have decided that this house is more important than we are." End quote. It should be noted that in 2018, the Westfield Planning Board approved splitting up a different lot around the corner from 657 Boulevard, one that required a larger exception than the Broaddus family requested.
This is just a bad neighborhood.
Or do we think, perhaps, is it a hot fuzz situation where everyone in the neighborhood
Is in on it.
and they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
we don't want this new family here.
Oh yeah.
The greater good.
The greater good.
The greater good.
good.
The greater good.
That Christmas, some families who had vocally protested the Broaddus' plan received threatening hand-delivered letters signed Friends of the Broaddus Family. More on these later. In spring of 2016, just short of 2 years after the first letter arrived, the Broaddus family found someone to rent the home. The family had 2 large dogs, fully grown children, and a clause in the lease that let them out if there was another letter. Within 2 weeks, another letter arrived. Quote, to the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria.
Okay, hang on. Oh boy. Before this, he's been very respectful, despite saying like, yeah, I'm gonna steal your blood children.
Yeah, he was really holding back before. Wench, too. He's still stuck with the Old English, though.
Yeah.
He knows theming.
657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher, end quote.
All hail the Watcher!
Oh, me and my minions, we all did
I've
it.
done it again!
I've done it
Like
again.
my father, and his father before him!
Yeah, one thing I've always said, I've always gone on record saying, all hail the Watcher.
That's true, he has said that. He says it every day
Been my
when he
MO
walks
since
into the
day
office.
one, all hail the Watcher.
Starting-
I walk into BuzzFeed, morning, all hail the Watcher.
All hail the Watcher, and we do the same thing. It's like,
All hail the Watcher?
Yeah, all hail the Watcher.
I've got my big stomach tattoo that says that,
That's
but I don't
true.
want to reveal that right now.
There was HR complaints.
The letter continued, quote, maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you fall sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet, loved ones suddenly die, planes and cars and bicycles crash, bones break. You are despised by the house, and the Watcher won, end quote.
This guy sucks.
He's just really just shooting them out there. He's casting a wide net and hoping one of them sticks.
Yeah.
So that he could be like, if one of those things happens, he's gonna be like, all me.
Watcher, baby.
Orchestrated by the Watcher.
They're like walking down the street, they kind of trip on the sidewalk, and he's like, yes, all hail the Watcher.
Run out of cooking oil? Watcher.
Oh, a mosquito bite? No, hail the Watcher.
Oh, you just took a little poopy and you don't have any more toilet paper? Watcher, sorry.
Despite the letter, the renters agreed to stay after more cameras were installed around the house. Now up to current day, it's time to look at suspects for who the Watcher could be. Our first suspect is a man I'm calling the Gamer. Around 11 p.m. one night, while two detectives from Westfield Police were surveilling 657 Boulevard, a car suspiciously stopped outside the house. The car was traced to a young woman from a town close by. The home of her boyfriend was on the same block as 657 Boulevard. The woman told investigators that her boyfriend was into, quote, some really dark video games, end quote, including possibly one where he played as a character called the Watcher, according to an investigator's memory. The Gamer agreed to be questioned by police, but he never showed up for his interviews. Detectives didn't have enough evidence to force him to come, so he was never questioned.
They said he played as a character called the Watcher, according to the investigator's memory. So maybe he didn't say Watcher, maybe he said The Witcher, which is a game.
Knowing how people who don't know about video games react to video games, I'm guessing this is...
Yeah, and if people judged you, for instance, off of how you play video games, I'm sure they'd have you behind bars pronto, right?
I don't know what you're implying here.
We did murder.
That was Sims
Characters
fun.
that-
Everybody murders people on The Sims.
They were characters based off real people, our coworkers, in fact.
Little Stephen Lim.
Stephen Lim, the Try Guys, we murdered them all.
Yeah, we did.
It was good.
The second suspect is another neighbor, Michael Langford. Derek began to suspect Langford after attending a neighborhood barbecue shortly after receiving the first letter. Langford lived in the house next door, which belonged to his 90-year-old mother. Several of her adult children, all in their 60s, lived with her, and the family was seen as strange but harmless. The Langfords had lived in the house since the 60s, which was when the Watcher claimed his father watched the house. Michael's father had died about 12 years before the first letter arrived, which could have been why the Watcher claimed to have done the job of watching for, quote, the better part of 2 decades, end quote. Langford was also known to spook new neighbors with his odd behavior, like walking through their yards and peeking through windows. Due to the positioning of the houses, Langford would have had a perfect view of the easel they had set on the porch for their daughter that the second letter referenced.
So you're telling me he has a habit of
Walking into people's lawns.
invading people's privacy
Looking in
and
their windows.
watching them.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty easy to see why they suspected him of being the Watcher.
If I moved in and I was like, wow, this place is great, and I just turned to my window and saw,
Well, you know me. My greatest fear is looking at a window and then just seeing a face there with 2 eyes just,
yeah,
watching you like that.
Not even a smile, just a...
I actually think a smile's worse. I used to have a recurring nightmare when I was a kid of an evil version of my dad looking through my window. It stemmed from when I watched Inspector Gadget as a kid. And you remember there was the evil Inspector Gadget?
Did he have big giant teeth?
He had big giant shiny teeth. And he had big eyes. So he would just stand outside my window.
And your father is a dentist, so
And
the
my
big
father-
scary teeth are even...
That's true. And we all know that he may have cut someone's head off.
Hey, I didn't say it. I did
That's
not
true.
make
It's
that
just,
claim.
that's canon, I guess, at this point.
Police questioned Michael Langford after the first letter, but he denied knowing anything, and there was little evidence to connect him. Because the police's interview was before the second letter, some believed it would have been especially reckless for Langford to continue sending letters. As well, those who knew him largely vouched for Langford, thinking him incapable of writing the letters.
I'm pretty done with neighbors and family members saying, I can't believe you could have done this. No one could have seen it coming.
Tell you what, that John Wayne Gacy is the sweetest fella I know.
Ted Bundy, he's got the eyes of just the kindest man.
A real dreamboat.
Yeah, there's no way Ted could have done that. Like,
Charming is all hell.
you know what serial killers are good at? Being charming.
Yeah.
That's how they get you in so they can kill you. So I'm just done with that whole narrative.
The Broaddus family, working with the police, sent a letter to the Langfords telling them they were planning on demolishing the house in hopes of drawing the Watcher to write again. There was no response. Casting doubt on Langford is a test later performed on one of the envelopes which found DNA that belonged to a woman. Thinking Michael's sister Abby may be the Watcher, an investigator compared the DNA to that from a water bottle used by Abby. No match. Shortly after this DNA test, and without explanation, prosecutors informed Derek and Maria that they had ruled out any of the Langfords as suspects. Which brings us to our third suspect, the Broaddus family themselves. Locals found it suspicious that the Broaddus family was over the years able to move from a $315,000 home to a $770,000 home to a $1.3 million home with refinanced mortgages. Some accused the family of getting in over their heads with the home and turning to a desperate ploy to get out of it. Some neighbors wondered why the Broaddus family kept renovating the house after they decided they wouldn't move in. When major movie studios began courting the family for the rights to their story, a big media deal could have been more motivation for concocting the Watcher. What's more, I mentioned that some local families received anonymous threatening letters after the Planning Commission rejected the Broaddus' proposal to split the lot. Those letters turned out to be written by Derek.
Look, this guy's nicer than me. I think if people denied my proposal and I saw that they were speaking out about it, I'm confronting them in the parking lot. I'm not doing it through anonymity.
Friends of Ryan Bergar aren't going to be...
Oh, the friends of Ryan Bergar are right here and right here. And they're gonna be going face to face in that parking lot.
He'll get you.
You don't need a case for that.
Yeah, he'll get you.
Don't bring the investigator, bring the ambulance. You know?
I love it.
Yeah,
That's
right.
scary.
Yeah.
Derek claims those letters were the only anonymous letters he's ever sent and were the result of years of frustration at his family's plight and the neighborhood's seeming ambivalence. As well, the psychological trauma from the letters alone makes the Broaddus family being the Watcher seem thin, casting more doubt on the theory that the Broaddus family is the Watcher. A later investigation found that another family on the boulevard had also received a note from the Watcher around the time the Broadduses received their first. Just like the previous owners, the Woods family, that family had lived in the house for years without a problem and threw the letter away. But if the Broaddus family was trying to get out of their home or make a movie deal, why send a letter to another house as well?
Seems a bit preposterous that someone would make up a mystery about themselves and hope to sell movie rights, basically.
Pretty far-fetched.
Yeah.
How do you explain that to your kids? The psychological trauma you're going through is
Yeah.
like, it'd be a really fun role play exercise to bring us together as a family. What if we pretended, now picture this, that a man was gonna murder you in your sleep? Thoughts? Unless, of course, the children were in on it and they're like in a writer's room. Like they're like walking around like a whiteboard.
The kids are pitching.
And the kids are
They're
pitching.
putting little index cards up on
They're
the
like in
wall.
their riffing, snapping around. Like maybe.
I know you've got him like threatening the house. What if he goes after us? Yeah, the kids.
And the dad was like, write it.
The
Write it
3-year-old
down.
pipes up. His father was a Watcher. And so was his father before him.
Oh my God. Legacy. It's a legacy stalker.
I know I'm new to
love
this.
it. I
I know
love
I'm-
it. Print it.
What makes the case of the Watcher so fascinating is the limited number of potential suspects, coupled with the complete lack of evidence that has stymied investigators' ability to make progress. This case is very recent, so there's a chance we haven't heard the last from the Watcher. Perhaps some future note will provide the key clue to identifying the person responsible. But until then, the case remains unsolved.
Overall, a very frustrating case. This dude could be anybody. He caused no physical harm, but he caused lots of mental harm, financial harm. People get away with things all the time in the past because it's, the forensic technology wasn't there. This is 2 years ago. This is a little bit scarier.
But at the same time, we do live in a bit of a surveillance state. You go to the store to buy a bag of chips,
Apparently
they
not
got you
enough.
on 10 different cameras. I'm saying maybe the way the world has prevented him from really
Doing something.
doing worse.
So he could just write it out,
Yeah.
but he can't act it out.
That's right. Who watches the Watcher?
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we go down under to examine the wacky shark arm case that captivated Australia in 1935.
Did you say wacky?
I mean, just, it's pretty wacky.
Well,
Inherently, any case that's titled the shark arm case, there's gonna be some fun to be had down the road.
Yeah, because I'm no marine biologist, but sharks don't have arms.
No, they have fins.
Yeah.
An astute observation.
Yeah.
So why is the arm in the title?
Curious. Curious.
Why don't we dive deep and figure it out? Okay.
In early 1935, business at Sydney, Australia's Coogee Aquarium and Swimming Baths was floundering. The world was in the depths of the Great Depression, and aquarium owner Bert Hobson needed something to lure customers and keep his business afloat.
There's already two sea-based puns in this
What are you talking
narration.
about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Is this gonna be a running theme?
I swear it's the last one.
Okay.
His spirits were buoyed when on April 18th, Bert and his son Ron caught a 14-foot, 1-ton tiger shark off the coast and put it in their pool. There had been an increasing wave of shark attacks, and this monstrous shark was just the attraction Hobson thought needed to turn the tide on his slumping enterprise. About a week after catching the shark, and in front of crowds of families enjoying the aquarium during a holiday weekend, the behemoth suddenly began convulsing and vomiting, spitting up a rat, a bird, and finally, a human arm.
It's a Great Depression.
Yeah.
You've scrapped together what little you have to
Yeah.
take the family to the water parks for the holiday.
Let's form some great memories as a family.
And a shark just starts vomiting rats in front of your children.
I don't think I've ever seen a shark vomit. To
Yeah.
imagine like a shark like just slumped over like a toilet is a very funny image. Obviously this was just in the pool. I also want to know if it like, the velocity of the arm coming out, did it shoot out into the crowd? Did it hit somebody in the face? Or was it just like it dribbled out, like over its lips?
Or just like, like when you're eating and you like kind of do a half burp, but a little bit comes up.
Oh yeah. Like a Chipotle burp.
Yeah, just a little
Yeah.
arm came out.
Yeah. Oh, too much salsa.
Hobson called the police, who fished the arm out of the pool and found a large tattoo of 2 boxers fighting inside the forearm. The shark was killed and its stomach was searched for additional remains, but none were found.
Boy, the last thing I would want after vomiting is to be killed.
Yeah, I mean, really just a bad week for that shark. And the shark's just got it, like his last thought had to have been like,
Why?
Using new fingerprinting technology, the police were able to identify the arm's original operator as 45-year-old Jimmy Smith. A local paper, Truth, described Smith as, quote, a well-known suburban billiard saloon keeper, one-time promising lightweight boxer, and a man with seemingly not an enemy in the world, end quote.
Seemingly is the operative word there.
yeah, I think so.
You don't get your arms cut off and fed to a shark if you're simpatico with all your pals.
Yeah, I can't say there's a lot of good relationships in your life if this is something that's happening to you.
In the early 1930s, Smith began working as a builder for one Reginald Holmes, a well-respected member of the community on the surface, but who hid undercurrents of criminal activity. In addition to operating a successful boat-building business, Holmes conducted insurance scams and organized drug deals, using his speedboats to collect drugs from ships. After the first building job, Smith plunged into more work for Holmes and became netted in his various illicit schemes. On Holmes's orders, Smith would scam builders out of their supplies, operate Holmes's speedboats, and was the caretaker of a pleasure boat called the Pathfinder. More on that later.
I love this guy.
Which guy? Holmes?
Holmes.
Why?
It's 1935. He's got a fleet of
Okay, I do think
Speedboats?
a fleet of speedboats is something that a Bond villain would have, and I kind of appreciate that this guy is taking it to heart. That's kind of cool.
I'm sure by that era's standards, a speedboat is a boat that goes 11 miles an hour.
Yeah, probably not that fast, but we're not mapping, relativity.
Yeah,
right now.
and
I
in
feel
my
like,
brain,
yeah.
I'm imagining Miami Vice, but with just more burlap.
For the time, it was a bitchin' boat.
A bit devilish of you to drop the term pleasure boat and say, well, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, it hook you in there, a cliffhanger.
Because the mind reels.
Tell your mind to settle down.
It can't. Oh, there's no settling this one down now.
Christ almighty.
A pleasure boat, my word.
Smith and Holmes also worked with an old chum of Smith's, Patrick Brady. Brady began his life of crime in World War I when he realized that he was good at forging the signatures of military generals. The three men began forging checks for small amounts of money from well-off clients of Holmes. Eventually, Holmes and Smith had a disagreement over one of the check forgery scams, and it's reported that Smith began blackmailing Holmes.
Hey, I love this whole crew. I love that these men become friends over the fact that he's like, hey, you know what? You're really good at forging signatures. Well, thank you. It's something I've been practicing for a while.
I love your fleet of speedboats. These guys are scammers.
Yeah, but how do you just crack that ice? How do you break the ice there?
Oh, because it's not
You're
exactly...
just like out to coffee one day and you're like, it's gonna sound a little wild, but you ever think about murdering a person?
How do you feel about scams?
Yeah, I mean, any sort of illicit thing.
Because there's no LinkedIn for criminals where they could read the resumes of other criminals and then hire them. So like, how do they find each other? I suppose like...
Good app idea.
They're like, yeah, LinkedIn for criminals. We should write that down. We'll write that down under our schemes.
C, put a little circle around it.
Yeah.
Fast forward to April 7th, 11 days before Bert Hobson caught his tiger shark. Jimmy Smith and Patrick Brady were out drinking and playing cards at the Cecil Hotel. Afterwards, the two went to a small cottage that Brady had in the beach community of Cronulla. It's widely thought that this was where Smith met his fate. A cab driver reported driving a disheveled Brady from the cottage to Holmes's house later that night. The driver would later testify, quote, "It was clear that he was frightened," end quote, and that Brady was obviously hiding something in his jacket.
You know, I can't think of many other things that would be as awkward to hide under a jacket than a full-grown arm.
Well, no, what you would do is you would tuck one of your arms behind and just
and then put the arm in the sleeve itself?
Yeah.
But what if he's like, nice to meet you, man? And it's
You'd be
like the wrong
like,
hand. Like if it's...
Yeah, how are you?
Smith's wife, who Smith had told he was going fishing, grew nervous when he didn't return after a few nights. One night, a man called her and said, quote, "Don't worry, Jimmy will be home in 3 days' time," end quote. Of course, Jimmy Smith never returned. Days later, the shark at the Koji Aquarium vomited his arm. On May 17th, Brady was arrested on forgery charges, which were merely a way to keep him in custody. Authorities interrogated him for 6 hours, but he refused to admit anything. It was only after the police questioned his wife that Brady agreed to make a statement. Brady implicated Holmes in Smith's murder, and when police questioned Holmes, he claimed to not know Brady. A few days later, Holmes took a speedboat out in Sydney Harbor, along with a bottle of alcohol and a pistol. The facts of the following trip are described in various ways, but with a grain of salt, the gist of it goes like this. Holmes got drunk on the boat and shot himself in the head with the pistol. Another man who was out boating with his children reported almost being hit by the erratically moving boat. When talking to police, the man said, quote, "You won't mistake him. He has a bullet hole in his forehead," end quote. For you see, Holmes survived the gunshot, which knocked him into the water. Now, with a gunshot wound in his head, Holmes climbed back into his boat and tried to drive back to Sydney Harbor. Police boats chased him for 4 hours until they eventually caught him. Holmes reportedly told police that he had been shot by strangers and was trying to escape. He apparently claimed he thought the police in pursuit were the people who shot him, which is why he didn't stop. It's hard to know what Holmes was really thinking because, again, he had a bullet hole in his head.
This guy apparently felt well enough to go on a 4-hour boat chase.
Yeah, I mean, he
not-
seemed to be doing fine. Like, I would think maybe it would really mess you up and like you'd live, but you know, you're clinging to life. But this guy is like,
Yeah, this guy's looking back. The wind's whizzing through the hole in his
wiping
forehead.
blood out of his little.
It's crazy.
Holmes allegedly said to police, quote, "Jimmy Smith is dead and there is only another left. If you leave me until tonight, I will finish him," end quote. Holmes claimed that instead of Brady's story accusing him of being the organizer of the plan to kill Smith, he had actually been extorted by Brady. Brady had surfaced at Holmes's house with Smith's severed arm and attempted to blackmail him, claiming he'd pinned the murder on Holmes's instructions. Holmes said that Brady had murdered Smith, cut his body up, put the pieces in a trunk, and threw the trunk into Gunnamatta Bay. In the 20s and 30s, this act was apparently so common that it had a name, the Sydney Send-Off.
Take a look, mate.
Oh, no.
Otherwise, I'll be giving you a CD send-off. You know.
Sydney Send-Off.
What do you think, mate?
Holmes told police he paid Brady the blackmail money, who in turn left the severed arm in Holmes's living room. Holmes claimed he then panicked and threw the arm into the ocean, where it was presumably eaten by the shark that was eventually caught and placed in the aquarium. Police said they would charge Holmes with being an accessory to the murder unless he agreed to testify against Brady at the inquest into Smith's murder, set for June 12th. Holmes agreed, and on the morning of June 12, Holmes was discovered in his car with 3 bullets in his chest, this time dead.
One thing to gather from this too is Brady definitely was the one who had the arm.
Okay.
However you want to talk your way around that one, that seems to be the fact.
Whether he was doing it for someone else.
Whether he was doing it on the orders of Holmes or he was doing it to then say, I'm gonna blackmail Holmes,
Yeah.
is the question, I suppose.
Brady's trial still went on, but without Holmes to serve as witness, the case fell apart. Brady's lawyer argued that according to a British statute from 1276, a body was necessary to conduct an inquest, and a limb could not be considered a body. The defense also argued that sharks typically digest food within 24 hours. Yet, in order for the prosecution's timeline to be correct, the arm would have had to been in the shark anywhere from 8 to 17 days. The defense also claimed it was possible someone had thrown the arm into the pool where the shark was kept at Coogee Aquarium, and that it was never in the shark at all. The prosecution came back with ichthyologists, fish scientists, who said the arm could have upset the shark's digestion and impeded its function. They also brought forth 14 witnesses who said they watched the shark vomit up the arm.
Did you guys see the shark vomit up the arm?
Yes.
You're on.
They all just did once.
After a day and a half, Brady was acquitted and released. A Sydney newspaper reported, quote, "Of course you are innocent, Mr. Brady, but please don't do it again, Mr. Brady," end quote.
Just having a life. Just having a little life.
Now, I've noticed your Australian character. Why does he tighten up like this? Like, what's that?
It's a choice I've made.
No, do it again.
All right. Quieter and quieter.
Quieter and quieter until I can't even understand what you're saying.
With that, it's time to look into some theories about what actually happened to Jimmy Smith. The first theory is that Holmes' story to police was correct, and that Brady murdered Smith and tried to extort Holmes. This is bolstered by the idea that Brady could have contracted Holmes' murder so he couldn't testify. However, at Brady's trial, defense attorneys pointed out that Brady was only 5'4", making it unlikely he could have killed Smith alone. Of course, his small stature wouldn't have prevented Brady from using a gun, but because no body was ever found, it's impossible to know how Jimmy was actually killed.
Well, but what do you think about that? Because Holmes said he was gonna testify against Brady, saying that Brady had done the whole thing, and then the day of the trial, he gets killed. So that obviously does not look good for Brady.
No.
So I don't think it's like good to gloss over that fact. That's a major hurdle I feel like you need to kind of confront.
It's a very gutsy. Very gutsy.
I mean, he still got off because of the arm wasn't attached to a body thing.
Yeah, no, I know that, but very gutsy to make a move like that when obviously tends to point back at you.
Which brings us to a second theory. No one killed Jimmy Smith. Because no body was found, we cannot definitively say Smith was murdered. It's possible he didn't want to bow to the pressure of Holmes's criminal activities and wanted out, but didn't think he could do so safely. So, he faked his own death. Admittedly, this theory seems unlikely, as Smith could have probably gotten away with just a severed hand instead of an entire arm.
Do you think he would be capable of cutting off his own arm?
I mean, he obviously would have had help.
Yeah, he would
Probably
have had
from
to.
his wife.
Yeah.
Because if he's faking his own death, it's obviously they're in cahoots.
Yeah.
They're gonna go live a life somewhere together. So he probably had her, do the little tourniquet on his right arm.
Very sweet to be in cahoots with your wife.
I mean, that's kind of part of the bargain, right?
Yeah, I guess. You don't hear that come up in vows very often.
In sickness and in health.
In sickness and cahoots.
I would say that sickness includes missing an arm or having to cut one off.
Yeah, very sweet. Okay. Sorry, honey, you're gonna have to cut my arm off.
I don't like this character anymore.
A third theory, suggested by Australian legal historian Alex Castles, states that Smith was indeed killed at Brady's cottage, but that Brady was not involved. Some years after the case, Brady's wife said she had gone to the cottage thinking she would catch her husband with another woman. Instead, she overheard a group of men playing cards and drinking. Castles believes Brady was out fishing and came back to find Jimmy already murdered. According to this theory, Brady never said anything about his former friend's murder out of fear of retribution. Our final theory, the only one that I can see has a clear motivation, is that Holmes orchestrated Smith's murder. Remember how Smith was the caretaker of a yacht that Holmes owned, the Pathfinder?
The pleasure boat?
I forgot about the pleasure boat.
The pleasure boat.
We're back to the pleasure boat.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
It's actually good that you set that up, and then I got so wrapped up in this crazy story that I forgot about this wonderful pleasure boat.
And now I'm reminded why I'm glad you forgot, because you were way too excited about a pleasure
Excited to
boat.
hear about the pleasure boat. Tell me about the pleasure boat.
It turns out Holmes and his associates had purchased, insured, and destroyed the boat as part of an insurance scam. Holmes, however, never received his insurance money, as Smith had reportedly become a police informant, telling authorities that the yacht's destruction was suspicious. This, coupled with Smith's reported blackmailing of Holmes over their check forging scams, could have led Holmes to arrange with Brady to have Smith killed. Once Brady murdered Smith, he brought the arm to Holmes as proof. Holmes would have disposed of the arm in the ocean, where a particularly unlucky shark happened upon it. In this theory, Holmes actually did get away with one last insurance scam. Police suspected that Holmes had contracted hitmen to kill himself after buying a generous life insurance policy. His wife and children would get the money and not have to endure the sinking embarrassment of his various crimes surfacing. Holmes's wife reportedly knew what happened to Smith and was about to share this information when she died mysteriously in a fire in 1952. It should be noted that Brady didn't die until 1965.
Do you think he got nervous when he read in the paper that a shark had vomited out an arm?
Yeah, like his wife came to him, look at this hilarious headline.
And he's like,
A shark is vomiting.
I gotta make some calls.
Ah, that's real funny. Sweat just
Sweat just dripping down his face.
When Bert Hobson and his son fished a tiger shark out of the ocean, they were trying to lure attention to their floundering aquarium. What they actually hooked was a mystery that would draw the attention of the entire country and end a local criminal's life. As for how Jimmy Smith's tattooed arm finally found its way into the shark, that remains unsolved.
One thing to mine from all of this, or to fish from all of this, is that if it wasn't for that pesky little shark, Holmes would have got away with all of this.
Friends murder each other all the time. You know, that happens. That's the way of the world. It happens. You just
I
gotta,
gotta make some calls.
just gotta watch what you say.
Okay.
Take a look. You won't be seeing much of him anytime soon.
You still doing it?
Yeah.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we discussed the Reykjavik Confessions, an Icelandic case in which 6 people confessed to murders that police have no physical evidence ever occurred.
This is a treat for me because, as you know,
Yeah.
I went on a trip to Iceland last year.
Yeah, I've heard about
Loved
it.
it.
It certainly is one of the many arrows in your anecdote quiver.
A big one.
Well, I'm excited to tell you that perhaps the place that you deemed heaven maybe isn't so heavenly.
Stunning vistas.
Yeah, hot springs, great stuff. Let's get into it.
On January 26, 1974, Guðmundur Einarsson, a quiet 18-year-old laborer, went out drinking with some friends. They ended up in a dance hall in Hafnarfjörður, a town just south of Reykjavik. Guðmundur left the party in the early hours of the day and decided to walk home. Around 2 a.m., two of his friends saw Guðmundur on the road, trying to hitch a ride with another man they did not recognize. Both men were clearly drunk, and Guðmundur swayed as he stumbled his way through the snow. Guðmundur never made it home. At the time, the entire country of Iceland's population was about 220,000 people. For context, that's 5,000 fewer people than lived in Reno, Nevada in 2010. Major crimes were very, very uncommon. They didn't even have government bodies tasked with finding missing people. After a few weeks of searching and coming up empty, the volunteer search parties ended their hunt.
Yeah, not a lot of crime. They're not used to it.
Still, I mean, you should have some systems in place.
Let me tell you something about Iceland.
Go for
One
it.
morning, we woke up to go on a beautiful kayak trip. The woman who drove us to the kayak thing, we were talking about just the way things go there. And she said, you know, we don't have a lot of crime here. About once a year, we will do a murder. And she made... And I was like, okay, I know you're not implying that the whole country gets together and picks one person like the lottery and decides to sacrifice them, like sort
was
of
that
a Wicker
the
Man
verbiage
situation.
she used?
She said, we will do a murder.
Do a murder.
Yeah.
Around 10 months after Guðmundur Einarsson disappeared, on November 19, 1974, a quiet construction worker, Geirfinnur Einarsson, with no relation to Guðmundur, was watching TV with a friend at his home in Keflavik. The pair briefly left to go to the Harbor Cafe, but Geirfinnur shortly returned. Back at home, he received a phone call. His wife Guðni said Geirfinnur told the man on the other end of the call, quote, "I've already come," end quote, followed by, quote, "I'll come," end quote. Geirfinnur then drove his car into town, parked close to a cafe, left his keys in the ignition, exited his vehicle, and was never seen again.
Two guys disappear within the span of 10 months. They have the same last name, no relation.
In a place where this is not common.
Yes.
So we may have a bit of a crook on our hands.
Yeah. Maybe
sneaky
time
peek.
to round up
The
a task
usual
force
suspect. Okay.
to find the missing people.
Another missing person meant another search party of volunteers who found no trace of Geirfinnur. This being the second disappearance within the year, detectives decided it might be time to do a bit more sleuthing. The first step for police was to find out who called Geirfinnur. Two teenagers and a cafe employee described a man they had seen place a call from a phone booth outside the cafe. From these descriptions, the police made a clay recreation of a man's face and began showing it around. Keflavik is a small town, so when no one could identify the man depicted in the police's model, they assumed the man was from out of town. The manager of a nightclub in nearby Reykjavik was questioned but released. By the following summer, detectives had no witnesses and, crucially, no bodies. What they did have were rumors swirling around one Sævar Siselski.
So this is the possible suspect.
This is the possible suspect based off description. So instead of doing like a police sketch, they did a arts and crafts.
They got a little Mr. Potato Head there.
They got a little Mr. Potato Head, yeah, exactly.
Sævar Siselski was a local petty criminal with a penchant for stealing things like alcohol, candles, and checkbooks. He sold drugs and would tell his girlfriend, Erla Bolladóttir, about his desire to commit the, quote, perfect crime, end quote. Together, the two would forge checks, using Erla's job as a telex operator for Iceland's post and telecommunication company. Shortly after Geirfinnur went missing, Erla and Sævar bought one-way tickets to Copenhagen with money they'd embezzled from Erla's job.
So these is like a Bonnie and Clyde situation.
Yeah. You know what, actually, now that you bring this up, I did go to Copenhagen right after Iceland, and it is a stunning city. Wouldn't mind escaping there.
In Denmark, Erla soon became pregnant, and the couple moved back to Reykjavik to have their baby in September 1975. In order to support his new family, Sævar's plan was to smuggle cannabis into Iceland. Perhaps consequently, Erla decided the two should live apart.
I'm gonna provide for this family with some of that sticky green stuff.
With some of that good.
Gonna turn Iceland into Greenland, baby.
While police were still stymied by the previous year's 2 disappearances, they had been making progress on a case of some stolen money at the Post and Telecommunication Company. On December 12, 1975, Savar was arrested on suspicion of embezzlement. 2 days later, Erla was also taken into custody. Erla initially denied everything. Authorities questioned her and detained her in solitary confinement. After 7 days of grueling questioning, she confessed to the Post and Telecommunication fraud. As she was preparing to be released, investigators showed Erla a photo of Gudmundur Einarsson, the first man to go missing, who she recognized from Reykjavik. They had once shared a car together and had, on another occasion, run into one another at a party. Erla told investigators that she vaguely remembered the night Gudmundur disappeared. She had been at a nightclub without Savar, who she thought was in Denmark at the time. When she got home, she immediately fell asleep, though she recalled a nightmare in which she could hear Savar's voice whispering outside her window. Sensing the faintest hint of a lead, police asked her if it was possible she hadn't been dreaming. So, instead of releasing her, they then threw Erla back in solitary confinement.
Good Lord.
She admits to the embezzlement.
Yep.
And then they throw a Hail Mary. They say, here's a picture of Gudmundur.
Yeah, hey, you do crimes.
Do you know this guy?
Yeah.
She remembers him. She has a nightmare that Savar, who is unaccounted for, is whispering outside of her window. The police then say, maybe it wasn't a nightmare.
Yeah.
They then throw her back into solitary confinement.
2 birds, 1 stone, as they say.
That is what they say.
It's a little something I heard in Iceland.
Alone, Erla began to doubt her memories. She thought, quote, is it possible they killed someone in the apartment and I saw the whole thing and I can't remember, end quote. Erla was questioned for 6 hours on December 20th, naming Savar and their friend Kristján Vitter as possible suspects in Gudmundur's disappearance. She also mentioned being perplexed to come home on January 27th, 1974, the day after Gudmundur disappeared, to find her bedsheet missing. Investigators drew up a confession that said she saw Savar and 3 others carry the body of Gudmundur while wrapped in the missing bedsheet. Erla signed it after being kept in solitary confinement for days and being threatened to be kept there indefinitely, all while she had an 11-week-old baby at home. Erla herself was only 20 years old.
Like, you put me in a room for 3 straight days. I'm starting to already question my sense of reality.
Yeah.
I need to talk to people.
The next day, Savar, who had been in solitary confinement this whole time, was questioned for 10 hours, then 6 hours the day after. Once investigators finally showed him Erla's confession, Savar told investigators he was involved, along with 3 friends. Kristján, who Savar had seen that Erla had already named, Tryggvi Runar, and Albert Klan.
So he's in solitary, he's wondering what the hell's going on. They're grilling him for 16 hours, and then they show that his, I guess former significant other has a signed confession saying this is what he did. I think that's the last straw, right, that breaks the camel's back.
And you may suspect if he's thinking, well, if I confess to this, maybe they'll just get me out of solitary. But if I implicate some other people, maybe that'll spread it out a bit.
Exactly.
The police had developed an unfortunate habit of throwing their suspects in solitary confinement anytime they needed to solicit a confession in this criminal case. They arrested the 3 men and threw them into solitary. Eventually, the men all confessed to playing roles in Gudmundur's murder. Now that they had extracted confessions for one disappearance, the investigators wondered, was it possible that they could solve the second one too?
Pretty much everyone I met in Iceland was so kind and so polite. I just imagine the most polite people in the world doing this and being like, well, we figured out that if you put them in that room, they tell you the truth after like a month or 2. So I guess maybe we'll just keep doing that.
I would like to not think that's the case. I would like to think that maybe the community is pressuring, like, this guy's running rampant. They killed 2 people. That's twice the output of the last 20 years. We got to do something. And this is the answer. They're doing result-based investigative techniques.
Of course.
They're getting the signature. They did their job in their head.
Yeah.
That's how they're legitimizing it. Which, like I said, some people, you could understand that.
Police went back to Erla and asked if it was possible the men they'd gotten confessions out of for Gudmundur's disappearance could have also been involved in Geirfinnur's as well. Erla replied, quote, maybe, end quote. The police told her, quote, we have a reason to believe that you have experienced something traumatic concerning Geirfinnur's disappearance, and we are going to help you remember, end quote.
They were like, do you think this can maybe be connected to this other disappearance? And she said, maybe. And they were like, oh yeah, that's the green light, baby. Fire up that room again.
Fire up that room.
It's ridiculous.
Not great, not great.
This is the second time they have taken her out. She has signed something and thought, I'm free.
Good to go.
And then they said, in you go. So you just got to think about what that would do to your brain. Her brain is Play-Doh right now.
Yeah.
The police began to question Erla, Sævar, and Kristján about Geirfinnur's disappearance, and sure enough, received confessions from all of them. Their stories, however, kept changing. At one point, the murder happened on a boat, but the final confession presented in court said the men had killed him on land. Eventually, Kristján mentioned a foreign-looking man who helped them murder Geirfinnur. That foreign-looking man was eventually identified as Gudjon Skarphétinsson, a former teacher of Sævar's.
If you had a good teacher, they say like, write a note to him, let him know how much you appreciate it.
Give him an apple or something?
Yeah, it'd be weird to be like, hey, you did a great, I really liked the multiplication tables we did. You want to kill a guy?
You did a really good job molding my mind. You did such a good job. I'd like you to come in with me on this big score. Like,
how'd you like to make a man disappear?
yeah, you like the Joker.
Gudjon was arrested on November 12, 1976, though he initially claimed he could not remember the night in question, which at this point was almost 2 years ago. 17 days of solitary confinement managed to jog his memory, and he confessed. By December 1976, Erla, Sævar, Kristján, Gudjon, Tryggvi, and Albert had confessed to involvement in the murders. Despite the fact that all suspects demonstrated foggy memory of the events, the fact that Erla, Sævar, and Kristján all tried to retract their confessions, which the court rejected, and the fact that no murdered bodies had been discovered. In December 1977, they were all found guilty by the court and given various sentences relating to their involvement.
Oh boy. It's getting a little,
Yeah, this is now getting kind of comical at this point.
Yeah.
They're just roping him in.
It's worth pausing to go over what life was like for the six while they were detained by the police. Albert spent a total of 88 days in solitary confinement. Erla spent 241 days. Gudjon spent 412 days. Tryggvi spent 627. Kristján spent 682. And Sævar spent a whopping 741 days, more than 2 full years, in solitary confinement. They were periodically prohibited from sleeping and interrogated hundreds of times. According to prison guard Linur Thor Magnusson, Sævar's head would be dunked in buckets of water as he was told he'd drown if he did not confess.
That is ridiculous.
Usually it seems like when they try to force a confession like this, it's like they may not reveal they've got someone locked up, dunking their head in a bucket.
Yeah,
They seem pretty proud of themselves.
You know, I imagine, yeah, they were pleased with the results.
While in detention, Kristján twice attempted suicide. At times, he was made to pose in recreated crime scene photos. In one, Kristján strangles a police officer who is standing in for Geirfinnur. False memory experts say that the acting out of supposed crimes can make those crimes more concrete and realistic in the suspect's mind. On May 3rd, 1976, Erla, who was not being detained at the time, was brought in for questioning as a witness. She was kept in custody overnight, and the following day, seemingly out of nowhere, gave a statement that she had shot Geirfinnur. She was then detained in solitary until December 22nd.
Their cruelty seems to know no end. If you're already doubting yourself and thinking like, man, maybe my brain is just blocking off that part of my memory. Suddenly, now, you've got sensations to tie to all the things that you may or may have not done.
The psychology of it is like, maybe if I give them this or that, they'll let me go.
Yeah.
And that's all it becomes.
On New Year's Eve, 1976, Gisli Gudjonsson, a young detective at the time of the disappearances who has since become one of the world's foremost false memory syndrome experts, gave Gudjon a lie detector test. That test sparked something in Gudjon, causing him to suddenly question whether he had been involved at all. He couldn't remember any of it happening. Gisli, author of the book The Psychology of False Confessions, 40 Years of Science and Practice, says false memory syndrome, which can be triggered by interrogations with false evidence, isolation, and tense emotional situations, can lead to false confessions. Gisli says that a diary kept by Gudjon while he was detained in solitary for 14 months was the best example of false memory syndrome he's ever seen. Of the whole case, Gisli says that, quote, "These individuals had absolutely no knowledge of what happened. They were just trying to appease the police. They were trying to be cooperative because they knew if they were not cooperative, they would be given more solitary confinement," end quote.
Well, now who's this young go-getter showing up on the scene? Because I like the cut of his jib.
Yeah, he's kind of riding in like the White Knight.
I like, you got this young detective sitting there. He's probably like, hey, you know, that guy's been in that room for 700 days.
Maybe that's not the best practice that we should be engaging in. Yeah.
We want to maybe think about what we're doing here, folks? Oh, no? Okay, well, I'm going to write a book about this.
You know, yeah, with youth comes a changing of the guard, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it was necessary here.
Yeah.
In September 2018, everyone was acquitted but Erla, who was still fighting a conviction of perjury. By then, everyone had already finished serving their sentences, and Sævar and Kristján had already died, both in their 50s. While much of that was about how horrible the justice system in Iceland was in the 1970s, there's still a mystery to get to the bottom of. So with that, here are some theories about what happened to Guðmundur Einarsson and Geirmundur Einarsson. The first theory is that the police got this one right. Guðmundur was murdered by Erla, Sævar, Kristján, Albert, and Tryggvi. Geirfinnur was murdered by Erla, Sævar, Kristján, and Guðjón. What evidence is there of this? No bodies were ever found, though there was Erla's missing bedsheet.
Missing bedsheet doesn't always equal murder.
You know, my freshman year of college, we went to Bed Bath & Beyond to get some stuff. And my mom was like, hey, you should get these rubber sheets. And I said, why in the hell would I buy rubber sheets? And she was like, you know, in case you spill like a pop on your bed or something.
Oh, I thought she was gonna say because you're like sleeping in a pool of your own vomit.
No. I was like, are you nuts? Anyway, back to the murder.
Did you buy the rubber sheets? I'm actually...
No, I didn't buy the rubber sheets.
Okay, I think you're getting...
Who would do that?
Apparently you, because you're getting pretty touchy about it, which makes me feel
I just
you know
think
what?
it's
Why don't
hilarious.
you go stand in that room for 10 days, and then I'll ask you about the rubber sheets.
Okay, yeah.
How about that?
I like it. It's good. You're bringing it back around.
The second theory is that neither man was murdered. While crime was very uncommon in Iceland, disappearances were not. In fact, disappearances happen so often in Iceland that they feature prominently in the country's folklore. In the 50 years prior to these cases, dozens of people had gone missing in Iceland. Most of them, their cases unsolved. In the more than 40 years since the disappearances of Guðmundur Einarsson and Geirfinnur Einarsson, they too have also taken on a nearly mythical quality within Icelandic culture.
I'm buying that because in Iceland, big open fields where I don't think people are walking on the reg. So you get a body out there, decomposes, nobody knows.
Yeah. I'm booking
50 years later.
I'm booking my ticket to Iceland right now. You've sold me.
You gotta check it out.
I wasn't on board until you got to the decomposing body in an open field, but after that...
It's a lot of land. A lot of land. A lot of bodies out there, man.
Yeah.
A third theory is that the men were murdered, but by someone else. New evidence in the case has compelled investigators to reopen it. A new witness says they saw two men carry a third, weakened man onto a boat the day Geirfinnur went missing. That man allegedly told the eyewitness, quote, "Remember me," end quote. When the boat that was carrying two men and the one weakened man returned to shore, there were only the two men on board. Recently, this witness claims to have seen one of the men in East Iceland, decades later working on electricity lines.
Weird that you wouldn't just, if you saw someone carrying a weakened man who looked at you and said, "Remember me," you wouldn't maybe call
Report
the
that,
local
report that.
authorities. Yeah.
Get the police on the horn, maybe do a little, hey, I saw a guy get carried off. He looked like he couldn't walk. He said, "Remember me." May want to look into it, and they'd be like, well, we don't have a missing task force, so
See you later.
see you later. Hang it up. And that's that.
Yeah.
While these mysterious disappearances took place over 40 years ago, we can draw important lessons for today in the way the cases were handled. While it might be tempting to try and cram facts to fit a convenient theory, truth works the other way around. Had authorities been better equipped to discover the facts of the case, perhaps we'd know what happened to Guðmundur and Geirfinnur. But because of a rush to find a convenient solution, these Icelandic disappearances remain unsolved.
It's not often that I have almost zero hope that a case is going to be solved.
I feel that way about most cases. I'm like,
Really?
Yeah,
There's a small glimmer, but this one, I just don't think so.
And for the record, Iceland is breathtaking. And you should really consider heading out there, man.
Hard sell after this story, but yeah, I'll check it out.
I met an Unsolved fan there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so shout out to all our murder heads in Iceland.
You
Is that what we're calling
You were doing so well.
Is that what we're calling ourselves? All right, see you next week, everybody.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we investigate the murder of Bugsy Siegel, the infamous mobster who helped launch the mega casinos that we associate with Las Vegas today.
That's me rolling the dice.
Oh, is that you rolling the dice at the craps table?
Yeah.
You know what's
Vegas guy.
Speaking of rolling the dice, we are taking a chance here by doing another mob episode.
Getting gutsy.
That's probably fine.
Yeah,
Right?
no,
They're
yeah,
all old.
yeah,
They're not going to be able to do anything. Granted, doesn't really matter how old you are. Pulling a trigger is just as easy, but you know what? I don't need to sleep at night.
Pop!
Okay,
See?
Jesus.
That easy. Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Benjamin Siegel was born on February 28, 1906 in Brooklyn, New York. There, along with childhood friends Meyer Lansky and Morris Moe Sedway, Siegel began a criminal career extorting local street vendors in exchange for protection from other gangs in the area. Fellow gang members started calling him Bugsy, a slang term for crazy at the time, due to his violent temper. Allegedly, Bugsy was not a nickname that Siegel cared for, and those who knew him would never call him that to his face.
Now, this is something I find interesting about most mob nicknames. Almost all of them, this is the rule that applies.
You don't call them
You don't call them their nickname to their face,
Really?
but when talking about them, you use the nickname.
I guess I could see if someone were calling you Babyface.
Or Tiny.
Or Tiny. Who else was that? I'm trying to think of other popular...
That's embarrassing that those are the only two that come to mind. You know.
Well, look, I'm not embarrassed to not know much about the mob. Put them behind bars.
Eventually, Siegel, Sedway, and Lansky transitioned to other crimes like car theft, bootlegging, and gambling, rising through the ranks of New York's organized crime world. It's widely thought that Bugsy was one of the 4 men who in 1931 executed Joe Mazzaria at an Italian restaurant in New York, leading Lucky Luciano to take the throne as the chairman of the board of the American Mafia. In 1937, Lansky sent Bugsy and Moe to Los Angeles to build up the mob's presence on the West Coast. While the mob had been heavily involved in bootlegging during the 20s, by the time Siegel landed in California, the 21st Amendment had put a stop to money to be made on importing illegal hooch.
It feels like the West Coast is always painted as like this just like do-good coast. Like it's always like we got to take the crime syndicate over to the West Coast.
Put
like,
some over there.
We never started it over here.
Too much crime here. Let's put some over there.
It's just we could never start anything on our own over here.
Yeah.
We're too distracted by the sunshine.
Bugsy decided to focus on gambling. He invested in the SS Rex, a gambling ship that was docked 3 miles outside of Santa Monica to try and avoid California anti-gambling laws. While authorities eventually shut it down, Bugsy set his sights on Las Vegas. Nevada had legalized gambling, so there wouldn't be as many headaches trying to avoid police. In 1945, with money from the syndicate back east, Siegel took over a struggling construction project outside of Las Vegas's city limits, the Flamingo Hotel and Casino. At the time, Vegas was nothing like we think of today. The Flamingo would be the first luxury resort on the Strip. Siegel hosted the grand opening of the resort on December 26, 1946, while the project was still unfinished. Nevertheless, mega superstars like Judy Garland and Clark Gable were at the opening, foreshadowing Vegas's glamorous future. After this party, Siegel closed the resort to finish construction, and the mob back east became antsy.
I will say building a big, giant, expensive luxury resort in the middle of the desert, well,
Yeah.
you know what? It seems like a bit of a gamble. It's good.
it's really great. It's good stuff.
Bit of a gamble.
By this time, the project's cost had ballooned from Siegel's originally budgeted $1 million to up to $6 million, much of the overruns believed to be due to Siegel skimming from the top. If there's one thing to remember about the mob, it's that you don't steal from it. During a meeting of mob bigwigs in Cuba, an agreement was reached on the fate of Bugsy. If the Flamingo proved to be a success, he'd be able to make things right. Luckily for Bugsy, by May of 1947, the Flamingo had already made $250,000 in profit. Unluckily for Bugsy, that apparently wasn't enough.
$250,000 of profit? That's like a decent enterprise right there, I would say.
Not good enough for me.
Not enough for you to be stealing, probably.
Yeah, I would not be happy with him.
Yeah.
On June 20th, 1947, Siegel was sitting on a chintz sofa in the living room of his mistress Virginia Hill's home in Beverly Hills. At 10:45 p.m. from a rose-covered pergola just 14 feet from Bugsy, a .30 caliber military rifle fired at least 9 shots at the mobster. 4 rounds hit him, killing him instantly. Just moments later, 3 of Meyer Lansky's henchmen strolled into the Flamingo Hotel and declared the casino was now theirs. Despite his fame, coroners misspelled Siegel's name on his toe tag, and his funeral lasted a mere 5 minutes with only about 6 people in attendance.
I don't think that's a testament to how popular he was as much as it was a testament to maybe the mob's power.
Get him in the ground.
Well, it's like,
Don't show up.
well, also,
Don't go to that funeral.
yeah, you know the mob whacked this person.
Yeah.
Maybe don't show up in support of him.
Yeah.
You don't want to add yourself to an ever-growing list.
If I get murdered, nobody come to my funeral.
Don't think you're going to have to put that disclaimer out. It's going to happen on its own.
Are you? That's unbelievable. Well, but now that I've put the disclaimer out,
yeah.
that's the reason why.
There it is.
I don't want anyone at my funeral. You hear
Yeah.
me?
According to Beverly Hills Police Chief Clinton H. Anderson, quote, "We spent many man-hours investigating the Siegel case and were convinced that he was killed by his own associates, but there was never sufficient evidence to pinpoint the identity of the assassin." End quote. With that, it's time to start looking at theories behind who murdered Bugsy Siegel.
Theory 1, the mob. See you next week.
Our first theory is Eddie Cannizzaro, aka the Catman. Cannizzaro was a former errand boy for Jack Dragna, who was once described in a report by the State Crime Commission as, quote, the Al Capone of California, end quote. Cannizzaro died in 1987 of heart failure, but before he passed on, he called a reporter and federal agents to his deathbed, where he confessed to 7 murders, including Siegel's. According to Cannizzaro's confession, quote, "It was a clean hit. I was picked because I knew Siegel and wouldn't make a mistake," end quote.
I don't know if a murder being personal necessarily makes you less likely to make a mistake, but I guess if he's on his deathbed, let him have the sentiment.
You may, in the sense that you know them better, you know maybe how they react, you know maybe where they...
But wouldn't that also like bring into emotion? What if you like remember, like you're about to do the hit, I have the scope right at your big head, and I'm thinking, we did have some good times on the road. Maybe I shouldn't do this.
Yeah,
You know, that kind of thing.
but then you're...
But then I got a
Your
job to do.
professionalism wins
My
over.
professionalism wins over, and
You pull that trigger.
and I Gallagher your head. Yeah. So, you know,
Jesus Christ.
Casting doubt on Cannizzaro's confession are a few inconsistencies in his story. Cannizzaro claimed he was questioned in connection with the murder at the time, but there's no record of an interview with him in the Bugsy case file. As well, Cannizzaro claimed that after the murder, he drove off in the direction of Wilshire Boulevard. A neighbor questioned after Bugsy was killed, however, told police that after the gunshots, a car was heard hurtling in the opposite direction towards Sunset Boulevard. At the time of his death, Cannizzaro was living with his mother and over 30 cats in the Agora Hills neighborhood of western LA County. He was hoping to create a birth control serum for cats and had asked some of his old pals in Las Vegas for funding.
Very funny that this man has 30 cats and is trying desperately to stop them breeding.
yeah, maybe.
Like, I like to think he had 2 cats and then a year later had 30 cats and is like, I gotta shut this down.
Yeah, it's just, I don't feel like that's something you disclose to your mob buddies. Like you're tossing back beers and like, you know, I got 30 cats working on a serum.
Yeah, everyone's probably like telling him crazy stories like, well, you know, I got 30 cats. And everyone's like, He's like, yeah, I'm trying to.
brought the cat
I'm trying
man?
to stop him.
I'm trying to stop them from boning. It's controlling my mind. I got a serum. You want to try it?
I'm working on a serum.
Also, I hate that he calls it a serum. It makes me feel like he is doing some like
working
garage
on
science.
A
with, like,
special little juice that I inject in their testicles.
Eddie, get out of the garage! Stop working on your damn serum!
Shut up, mother!
The second theory is a World War II vet, Robert McDonald. This theory comes from Warren Hull, an executive assistant in Nevada who said McDonald's role in Siegel's murder had been a family secret for decades. On his deathbed, Hull's father urged his son to research the story and get it out there. Hull obliged the dying man's request, going on to create a 400-slide PowerPoint presentation laying out the points of his case.
Yowza! Who's he showing that to?
Yeah, who is he showing that? I guess investigators, perhaps?
He's just inviting friends over for margaritas?
Yeah.
I got something I want to show you. It's crazy. It's gonna take about 4.5 hours.
Is this your trip to Niagara Falls? Hope you went to the bathroom because there's no breaks.
McDonald was married to Hull's mother's cousin and best friend, Betty Ann McDonald. Betty Ann's mother, Gaynell Rockwell, worked at City Hall in Los Angeles. There, she met Jack Dragna, the Al Capone of California from our previous theory. Gaynell told Dragna her daughter was having troubles with her husband, McDonald, who could be violent at times. McDonald also happened to owe the mob $30,000. Dragna went to McDonald, explaining his debts would be forgiven if he offed Siegel. According to Hull, McDonald's time in the military made him an expert marksman, including with the .30 caliber carbine, the alleged murder weapon. Again, however, the neighbors' report of a speeding car cast doubt on this theory. Hull thinks that McDonald, who lived just on the other side of a golf course from Virginia Hill, would have escaped on foot, sneaking back to his home less than a mile away in the dark.
He just lived on the other side of the hill. He'd sneak, through the dark covert, like on foot.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Unless.
He wanted to throw them off?
Yes. Why would I drive when I could just walk?
You really think he went that deep into it?
The old double bluff.
Just 3 months after Bugsy's murder, McDonald would go on to shoot himself and his wife, Betty Ann. Hull says there's no evidence that Beverly Hills police ever investigated McDonald as a suspect in Siegel's murder, despite the fact that McDonald allegedly used the same type of weapon to kill himself and his wife as he did on Siegel, less than a mile away and only 3 months after Bugsy's murder. Hull believes it's even possible that Howard Hughes may have pressured police not to investigate McDonald, as he had worked closely with the man's father.
Little Howard, yeah, little Howie.
A little Howie came in here.
How?
And most of these mob ones, I feel like it's like, maybe he did it behind the barn and buried him tossed his body in the river, whereas this one actually has things that link him to the crime, I feel like.
Tricky thing is the mob is good at covering their tracks.
That is true, that's what they're built on.
Yeah.
A third theory comes from Bee Sedway, the wife of Mo Sedway, Bugsy's childhood friend coming up in the mob. According to Bee, Mo had been sending casino numbers back to Meyer Lansky on the East Coast, including gambling winnings and, crucially, construction costs. Bugsy conducted a meeting in March of 1947 without Mo. There, he reportedly said he was looking to get rid of Mo, saying, quote, "I'll have Mo shot, chop his body up, and feed it to the Flamingo Hotel's kitchen garbage disposal," end quote.
I thought you were gonna say he was gonna feed him to the flamingos, and that would have been cool as hell.
One of the attendees told Mo, who called his wife and asked her to drive from LA to Vegas. The two then drove out into the desert and then walked even further to ensure a private conversation.
Walking into the desert to have a private conversation.
Well, because that's the only way you can ensure.
Oh, hey, I get it.
Also, not gonna lie, if you do have a death threat on your head, maybe not best to walk out to where no one could find you or see you.
Good point.
Let's pre-package ourselves for this murder. Make it real nice and easy. This will be real nice. They can't hear us at all.
Let's have a private conversation. You know what we ought to do? Dig a hole for ourselves.
They'll never find us down here.
6 feet down, I feel that'll be pretty good.
It'll be good. It'll be great.
When Mo told his wife of the threat against him, Bee immediately called Matthew Moose Panza, a crane operator and Bee's lover. Mo and Bee, who married when he was 41 and she just 17, had a very unconventional marriage for the time. They were very honest with one another. and knew about one another's extramarital companions. In fact, Mo had insisted that upon his death, Moose was to marry B. After their meeting, Moose arrived in Las Vegas to protect Mo. After the mob boss meeting in Cuba where cost overruns on the Flamingo were discussed, however, Lansky gave Mo his blessing to take matters into his own hands. Moose volunteered to do the job and spent weeks practicing his marksmanship.
I got a question about my boy Moose.
Yeah.
Is he a little guy?
Oh, because you think usually in the mob it's kind of like
Yeah. Like a big, tall, lanky guy like me would be a short stack or something.
they are a fan of oxymorons.
Yeah, I love people being like, oh, wait till Moose gets here. A big knock at the door. They open the door and a little.
Hey there. What's the problem here?
Mo's in trouble? I mean, hop in the moose mobile. Drive down.
According to B, after pulling the trigger, Moose hurried to the car and drove straight to Santa Monica, where he broke down the rifle, leaving the butt of the gun on a rooftop and throwing the barrel into the ocean. As his health was failing, B's son Robbie reached out to a reporter to tell his mother's story. When that reporter reached out to the Beverly Hills Police Department to check whether Moose had been considered a suspect, they replied, quote, "It's in the best interest of the city of Beverly Hills not to speak to you," end quote.
I love the fact that that posh office could possibly be dirty.
Yeah. I think that's just how everything in California back then was just filthy.
Really though?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I guess Beverly Hills I always saw as a place that, like, you know, I know a lot of LA was corrupt, but I just
all of it. All of it.
So you go by the principle that the more glamorous, the more dirty, perhaps.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I could get behind that.
Yet another theory suggests the Chicago mob took down Bugsy with the help of Siegel's mistress, Virginia Hill. Hill had been considered a trusted mob courier, and according to author Andy Edmonds, the Chicago mob used Hill as a source of information on Bugsy's dealings. While Siegel was building the Flamingo, the Chicago mob was financing a competing resort, the Dunes, on the current site of the Bellagio. Siegel's murder also took place at Hill's home. Hill would have been able to inform an assassin about Siegel's habit of reading the paper in her living room at night, and Hill had conveniently skipped town for Paris that day. Hill eventually moved to Europe to avoid charges of tax evasion, where she died at the age of 49. Her death was deemed an overdose, but some have their suspicions that the mob was involved.
Chicago mob, they're
boy.
good at what they do.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna come to this. Shocker.
As someone who was born under the bean, let me tell you,
Yeah.
Chicago, we know what we're doing. It's interesting, a lot of mob movies, you look at Goodfellas, stuff like that, sure, all takes place East Coast, but you really want something done? Go to those boys in Chicago.
Man, you know, I gotta say, in a shocking turn of events, Shane talked about Chicago again in an episode. Frankly, what an upset.
Oh, and the pizza.
As one expects with mob killings, there are plenty of other theories out there, mostly unsubstantiated. To this day, no one has ever been prosecuted in the death of Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. And while what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, what happened to the man who helped birth modern Vegas remains unsolved.
I know I've busted this out before, but this is very much a case of
Oh boy.
just gonna have to let it be a mystery.
There it is. It took us 3 episodes to get to that, and we've arrived.
Some things you'll just never uncover, and you just gotta, that's the way of the world.
If there's one where the evidence seems the most strong, I would say that it's the one that involves Mo, Moose, and Lansky.
And just love Moose.
Do love me some
Big Moose fan.
Big Moose fan. But either that or the Hill one also makes sense too.
Yeah.
But if I had to go with one, I would go with Moose.
All in on Moose.
Put in an all,
All
on
the
Moose
chips.
there. Slide them all in.
Is that good? Is that okay to end on? A nice Vegas reference.
Yeah, there you go.
See you next week.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we take a look into the Texarkana Phantom Killer, a case that has been referred to as, quote, the #1 unsolved murder case in Texas history, end quote.
#1, baby.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't think they have like a big board in the Texas police station where they,
Do you think they vote?
oh, it seems all relative, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But they seem pretty resolute about this guy being at the top of the heap.
And it's a rowdy town, you'll see that.
Is it really?
It's a rowdy town.
You been there?
No, I haven't been there, but I read it's a rowdy town.
Fun to read about a rowdy town.
A rowdy town with 2 rowdy boys. Let's get into it.
On February 22nd, 1946, in the Texas-Arkansas border town appropriately named Texarkana, Jimmy Hollis, 25, and Mary Jean Larry, 19, went on a date to the movies and began driving back to Mary Jean's home. On the way, they stopped their car on a quiet, unpaved road about 100 yards away from some houses in a residential neighborhood.
That's what I like
There
to
you go.
hear. Yeah, you know what they're doing.
How many?
Here we go, wait. Yeah.
So wait, in this
Is this
scenario,
still funny?
In this scenario,
it's
where-
2019. When did this bit start? God, this had to be like caveman times.
You think like a Neanderthal looked at his other Neanderthal pals and went,
Yeah, probably. It's one of the world's greatest bits. I feel like people don't do it enough nowadays because we take it for granted. Spread that around this year. You know, if you see your two friends and you think maybe they've been smooching behind your back, be like, I know what you guys are up to a little.
I actually don't think your angle's catching it. I think we can still see your face a little bit, so you might have to turn
Is this?
like that. If I turn,
It's like we're both making out.
After about 10 minutes, a man walked up. As Mary Jean would later relate, quote, he wore a white mask over his head with cutout places for his eyes and mouth. He pointed a flashlight and pistol at us. He came up on the driver's side of the car and told Jimmy something like this, I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say. End quote. Both Jimmy and Mary Jean got out of the car. The assailant made Jimmy take off his pants, then hit him twice over the head, cracking Jimmy's skull and knocking him unconscious. The attacker then tried to sexually assault and rob Mary Jean.
Oh, okay, it did, yeah, it was good. It got a little rough.
yeah, it's a little rough.
Interesting that he would go through the theatrics of wearing a mask.
Yeah, anytime someone wears a mask and it's a serial killer situation, you wonder, did they intend to maybe let them go? Because the only reason why you're wearing a mask is so that they can't then identify you later.
Yeah, oh, that's true.
If a killer approached me and he had a mask on, I would feel a little bit better about my chances of surviving. Because if he walks up with a gun and you could just see his face, like I could see it's your face, I know that's probably the last thing I'm gonna see. And right now I actually thought of staring into those dead cold eyes. And if that's the last thing I see on this earth, I made some mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Mary Jean pleaded with the attacker, telling him they didn't have any money. The attacker hit Mary Jean, knocking her to the ground. When she got up, the man told her to run. Mary Jean took off down the road, but was wearing high heels. The assailant quickly overtook her and hit her again, knocking her to the ground, where he began to abuse her. At this point, Jimmy struggled to his feet and managed to stop a passing car. It's thought the assailant saw the car lights and fled from Mary Jean. Both Jimmy and Mary Jean received medical treatment. Jimmy spent over 12 days recovering in the hospital.
This guy did literally get his skull cracked and still was able to get up and flag down another car, which then saved their lives.
Yeah.
Good for Jimmy.
I mean, it could just be like a fracture, right? I don't know how skulls really work.
From what I read, it was a
Pretty bad?
pretty severe crack. From the description, she thought that he had shot him. That's how loud the cracking noise was, which is not good.
So, 0 for 2.
Yeah, 0 for 2. But this, as you'll see, would be just the first of his attacks.
In the mid-40s, Texarkana was a relatively violent place. Killings, robberies, and other crimes were very common. It might make sense then, while the attack on Jimmy and Mary Jean was brutal, the community didn't pay it much attention until another attack occurred a month later. This one fatal.
Yeah, I mean, it must be an upsetting place if a masked man trying to assault 2 people is just passing news.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, did you hear about that, the masked phantom who tried to murder 2 people? Oh, yeah. Hey, let's go get a soda pop.
On the morning of March 24th, authorities found the bodies of 29-year-old Richard L. Griffin and 17-year-old Polly Ann Moore in a 1941 Oldsmobile on what was then known as a lover's lane. Both had been shot in the back of the head. Richard was found between the 2 front seats on his knees, with his head in his hands. His pants pockets were inside out, thought to be the result of someone trying to rob him. Polly Ann was discovered face down in the back seat of the car, though there was evidence that suggested she may have been murdered on a blanket outside the car and placed there later. The couple had last been seen around 10 p.m. the night before, eating dinner with Richard's sister. They had been shot with what was thought to have been a Colt .32 caliber pistol, and any footprints that would have been around the car had been washed away throughout the day.
We gotta give kids places to make out.
That's unfortunately, most of these serial killer cases happen in a lover's lane scenario.
That's what I'm saying. We gotta give them a well-lit area that is central to a town's location.
Maybe some water, vending machines nearby.
Oh yeah, some soda pops, some sprees, whatever, you know? Just a place with a bunch of, well, probably don't want to bring hammocks into the equation because smooching might elevate, but...
That is true. Also, a hammock would be really hard to escape if a serial killer did come up to you while you were smooching in a hammock.
Sure.
It's impossible.
It's just a murder bag.
You're trapped in a little net. You're like in a little spider net.
Though there weren't many clues for authorities to go off of, 3 days after the killings, at least 50 people had been asked about the murder, and over 100 false leads had been investigated. While this attack, ending in the murder of a young couple, turned more heads than the first assault, the community still believed these events to be isolated incidents. 3 weeks later, their indifference would change into a frenzy of fear. On April 14th, authorities found the bodies of 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker and 16-year-old Paul Martin. The previous night, the two teens had attended a band performance at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Club, where Betty Jo played alto saxophone. They were also seen leaving the dance around 1:30 in the morning. Paul had been shot 4 times and was discovered in a rural area on North Park Road. Betty Jo had been raped and shot twice. Her body was found up in the woods about a mile away.
So escalating, getting worse.
Getting worse, he's getting a little more bold. One thing you can note though, because you always see the trends of these serial killers, all of these were couples.
Interesting.
Both had been shot with a .32 caliber Colt, the same weapon thought to be used in the previous attack. This being the third attack in less than 2 months, now with 4 young people dead, the community was finally paying attention, and they were panicked. When their husbands and fathers were away for work, women and children would move into the aptly named Hotel Grimm in downtown Texarkana.
Sort of like a staycation.
No, it's not like a staycation. It's more like people around us are getting murdered. Let's all huddle together under the roof of a place named the Hotel Grimm.
Well, clearly it's a popular establishment, and if everybody trusts them, they're going there as a place of refuge.
I suppose.
Maybe stop being so judgy of these.
The thing is, maybe I just don't have the insight that you have, because this town, as I said, was a rowdy town. They even called it Little Chicago. And as we all know, that's where you hail from.
I hail from Big Chicago.
Murder Town, USA.
Okay, well, you know, there's some big issues there.
Others bought guns and crafted homemade security systems from kitchenware and wire around their homes. Typically bustling streets went quiet. The Texarkana Gazette named the attacker the Phantom Killer.
And it doesn't help that the press named him the Phantom Killer. They gave him a nickname. If you give someone a nickname, it's a compliment. We should never be doing that for the serial killer.
Don't puff him up.
Because he probably read that in the paper next day and was like, that's got a ring to it. I'm gonna get some business cards printed.
Yeah.
Tillman Johnson, one of the lead investigators, said, quote, "We were constantly getting calls, mostly at night, about prowlers. People would call about any noise they heard at all," end quote. Everyone was afraid they would be the next victim of the Phantom Killer.
Seems like a little bit of a stretch for really any Texan in the 1940s to say, you know what, I think I might need to buy a gun.
It is also fun that they're setting little Kevin McAllister booby traps around
Love
the house.
that. I think people perhaps undervalue booby traps.
I don't think they're that practical in real life.
They could be if you do it well.
Who are you trying to booby trap on a regular basis? Your cat? Your sweet Obie?
He's a sweet boy.
You trying to booby trap that cat?
No, I don't. I want to do the opposite. I want to booby hug him.
Booby hug him.
I don't know what the term is.
It's
whatever the
definitely not
opposite
that.
of a booby trap is.
I'll tell you the term
I want to
is
lay
not-
down a path of rose petals, you know? Come this way, sir.
I tell you what.
You're a sweet boy with a fuzzy face. I'll give you a little hug.
On May 3rd, 37-year-old farmer Virgil Starks was listening to the radio when a .22 caliber round tore through his front porch window and hit him. His wife Katie left their bedroom to find Virgil bleeding in the living room. Katie went to call for help when the attacker shot her twice in the face. The bullets knocked some of her teeth out, but she survived. Ducking to avoid more shots, she made her way back to the bedroom. As the attacker tried to break in through the kitchen window, Katie escaped out the front door, with a bullet stuck under her tongue and trailing blood behind her. Katie made it to a nearby farmhouse, where she was taken to the hospital and survived. Virgil, however, died.
I don't like any mouth teeth stuff. Don't like it.
No, you know, like when people get in fights and you can kind of see like the teeth coming like, and they're falling out of their mouth.
I've got big issues with teeth, even if I'm sitting with someone who is taking a fork and eating and it scrapes against their teeth.
Oh yeah, I don't like that either, or a drill. We're also kind of lightly glossing over the fact that she got shot in the face twice.
Yeah, that's worse than a fork scraping.
An indication of the fear the Phantom Killer had instilled in the community. 20 to 30 police officers converged on the Starks' farmhouse. Police tried to gather evidence and interview possible suspects and witnesses. According to Johnson, quote, people would stand out near the front of their homes and yell at you to identify yourself before you got too close. You had to identify yourself or you would get shot, end quote.
Fair.
So yeah, I mean, we're on high alert here.
Yeah.
If this was me, I'd have a double barrel shotgun pointed directly at the door at all times.
You'd probably have to have shifts, because I'd want someone out there at night too.
I'm staying up day and night. I don't sleep.
Well, then now you're setting yourself up that's vulnerable because
That's
you're
true.
going to fall asleep.
Maybe I'll take a nap.
Yeah, take a nap.
I'll take a nap and then
Hey, I'll
let's
tag
do
in.
shifts. You're right.
Yeah.
Shifts are right. Shifts are good. I wanted to be. I've never even shot a gun, so
You've never shot a gun?
no,
You don't have to.
I don't think I have to.
Authorities followed bloody footprints left by the killer that went from the house across the highway, where they eventually lost the trail. While this incident exacerbated the fear of the Phantom Killer, it's possible this killing was done by someone else. The other attacks had targeted people younger than the Starks and had taken place in cars, not homes. In addition, Virgil was shot with a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol, a different weapon than the .32 caliber used in the previous murders of Betty Jo and Paul. Still, this incident was included in the Phantom investigation as panic swept the area. Authorities took to dressing as young couples in an effort to lure the murderer, but it appeared the Phantom was done. 2 months later, with no more Phantom murders, the community's fear began to decrease, and life started to get back to normal. No one was ever found guilty of the murders.
Backtrack just a bit.
About the dressing up?
Exactly right.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'm imagining an old Texan man with a large bushy mustache. I guess like a chubby Sam Elliott, a cop hat on, a white t-shirt, pack of cigarettes rolled up in it.
You're imagining a clearly adult, burly police officer
Exactly
trying to
right.
look like a 16-year-old boy.
100%.
And it's hilarious.
Yes. And next to him, also an adult male.
With a big old mustache
Yeah,
and
sort
a
of
wig
like-
on.
Sort of like maybe
Yeah.
pretending to make out. Or maybe actually making out.
Or
Maybe like-
pre-recorded noises of smooching noises.
Oh,
Like a lot.
like a Ferris Bueller situation. Just sort of
That's like cartoon kissing. No one sounds like that when they're kissing.
With that, it's time to look into possible theories behind the Texarkana Phantom murders, of which there are basically only two. The first theory is H.B. Duty Tennyson, a college student who confessed to some of the killings in a note left behind after he killed himself. According to a newspaper from the day of his death, a sheriff reportedly said the note read, quote, "Why did I take my own life? Well, when you committed 2 double murders, you would too. Yes, I did kill Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin in the city park that night, and killed Mr. Stark and tried to get Mrs. Stark," end quote. According to Duty's cousin, forensic psychiatrist Dr. John Tennyson, Duty had connections to all of the victims. He was allegedly an usher at the theater where some victims of the attacks had seen movies before their deaths, and had been in the same high school band as Betty Jo. According to Dr. Tennyson, one of Duty's friends lived under the same roof as the sister of Katie Starks.
all right.
So he had some connections to some of the victims. But I will note that the sources, when it came to that note in particular, were shaky at best.
It was just him. Why do they save these things? Why is this hearsay?
People want to have,
Answer me.
it's like that. People in the public want answers. There's this horrible thing happening in their town. They look to the authorities for answers, and if they don't have them, there's outrage. So you need to have something to say.
Interesting.
So as a result, maybe some shoddy reporting.
But it is fairly convenient that he has all these connections to them. And
It is. He's a very interesting suspect for sure. But for me, because there's that note and these connections, and yet he still wasn't indicted for the crimes, there must have been something that ruled him out outright.
yeah.
Our other theory is 29-year-old Uel Lee Swinney. Around the time of the attacks, Arkansas State Trooper Max Tackett observed that cars were reported stolen and later found abandoned whenever the Phantom Killer made an attack. Following this lead led police to stake out a downtown parking lot on June 28, 1946. where a stolen car was abandoned. This led to the arrest of 21-year-old Peggy Swinney, the new wife of one Ul Lee Swinney. While in custody, Peggy gave many detailed statements explaining how her husband committed the murders of Betty Jo and Paul, though descriptions of her own involvement varied from statement to statement. On July 23rd, Peggy gave a statement saying that on April 13th, the day before the bodies of Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin were found, she and Ul parked at Spring Lake Park and drank some beers. According to her statement, Ul left the car saying he had to, quote, take a leak, end quote. Peggy said, quote, he was gone from the car about 1 hour when I heard something that sounded like 2 gunshots. It was just getting daylight when he came back to the car and started driving out of the park at a rapid rate of speed. When he came back to the car, I saw that his clothes were wet up to his knees and damp on up to his waist, end quote.
She says that her boyfriend steps out of the car to go pee.
Yep.
And then he takes a long time, comes back. And when he comes back, he's very rushed.
She's
he's
heard
driving,
gunshots.
She's heard gunshots. He's driving very fast. He's wet. Not because of the pee, I imagine because he...
Went through a creek or something?
It's near a lake, so...
It's near a lake. Washing off the blood? She does seem to have a fair amount of details.
She does, and there's one detail that she has that is very interesting that she knows, and we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
On July 24th, Peggy gave another statement. In this one, she said Ul had said, quote, he was going out to the park to rob someone, end quote. Peggy said she went with Ul to Paul Martin's car, where Ul pointed a gun at the young couple and told them to get out of the car. Peggy said that she refused to search the teenagers, which angered Ul, and he shot Martin twice. Peggy then allegedly held Betty Jo in place while Ul got his car. He drove it back, made both girls get into the car, drove west, turned around, and shot Paul 2 more times, as he had apparently been able to get up and move after the first 2 shots. He took Betty Jo into the woods while Peggy waited in the car. When Ul returned, he told Peggy he had tried to, quote, get some, end quote, with a young girl, and then shot her after she refused.
Wait, so this is the same attack but a different story?
So she gave multiple statements about this day that they were at the lake. One version, she says he left and came back. This version, she says,
She was well involved with
she
all
was
this.
somewhat involved, and she said that he was going to go rob these people.
I see.
While Peggy's story shifted, she crucially told police information that only someone who had been at the scene of the crime would have known. For instance, Peggy mentioned how Paul's date book was thrown into some bushes, a fact that only Bowie County Sheriff W.H. Bill Presley knew at the time, as he had been the one who'd found the book.
So that sounds like she knows what she's talking about.
Okay, so there's 2 scenarios, right? She was there when the murder happened, or
She happened upon it?
she happened upon it while they were at the lake, found these bodies, saw that there was that in the bush, and then ran away, and then realized later, maybe they'll find out I was there.
Yeah.
But I will say that if scenario 2 was true, it does not make a bit of sense for her to be like, yeah, we decided we were gonna rob them.
Oh, they might find out I was there. I know what. I'll tell them we killed him. That doesn't make any sense.
I know, I'll tell them he killed them, and I thought about a
And
robbery.
I just kind of was
but
there.
I wasn't down.
Ul was arrested at the Arkansas Motor Coach bus station as he arrived back from Atlanta, where he had attempted to sell a stolen car. While his wife was willing to talk to investigators, Ul was not. Critically, while Peggy did give statements to investigators, she could not be forced to testify against Ul, as they had gotten married mere hours before police arrested her.
I'm having a hard time taking a temperature on these 2. Do they love each other?
I don't know,
Clearly
man.
not, because she's...
She's, ratting him out, but that also could be self-preservation. She could have been involved.
Do they get off on this?
That's what I was saying, like a weird Bonnie and Clyde.
But Bonnie and Clyde stuck together. Bonnie wasn't like, hey, you gotta check out this Clyde guy.
Ul was taken to Little Rock for a truth serum shot, but he was given too much, which caused him to pass out. Investigator Tillman Johnson said, quote, I think that if we had just kept him here in Texarkana and kept questioning him, we would have gotten the truth out of him eventually, end quote.
Or the truth serum's not real.
Yeah, I mean, we've come across this very elusive
Not a real
truth
thing.
serum.
We've looked it up.
In most of these cases, I mean, whatever it is, apparently you could overdose on it. You could take too much truth serum, too much serum.
Too much serum, man. Whoa.
Yeah.
So you're bringing in this quack doctor who's like,
He's
he's not telling the truth, give him more.
Hey, let me inject him with my lemon juice cocktail. I'll tell him, make him.
Looking pretty woozy, Doc.
Peggy was imprisoned for her own involvement in the car theft, but eventually released. Ul was sentenced sentenced to life in state prison for being a habitual criminal after the auto theft charge, but was released on parole in 1973 when the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals decided that he didn't have adequate representation on a car theft charge from 1941. Ewell died in a nursing home in Dallas in 1994.
Crazy to think you can kill 5 people in the 1940s and then live long enough to see Jurassic Park in theaters.
Thank you for
Discuss
that.
some other things.
Thank you
but
for that colorful
It's
perspective.
just crazy. I'm just trying to put into perspective the fact that this man so long ago committed these crimes
And then he
so
saw
far into the future.
and he saw the rise of industrial light and magic.
ILM. They're wizards.
Yeah, I don't really know how to wrap this one up because it's just kind of upsetting because I feel like this man got away with it.
Or the other guy. Gotta say that.
Or the other guy.
But it does seem like this guy.
The Texarkana Phantom murders stand out as managing to stoke a frenzy of fear in a community that had been numbed to violent crime. As W.E. Atchison, a resident of the area who was 16 at the time of the attack, said, quote, "The big wonder for everyone back then was whether the killings were being done by someone who lived among us, and I still wonder who did it," end quote. Across 4 attacks, 5 people were shot to death, and 3 others were severely injured. As for who was responsible, that remains unsolved.
I will say that since the time of the murders, the town really has leaned into it. The movie that was made about this was called The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
I've heard of that. I didn't realize that was about this. I've never seen it, but the good title.
that's about the Texarkana Phantom Killer.
Dang.
Well, I don't really know how to wrap this one up because it's sad.
That's
Here's a positive spin.
Yeah, let's do it. What do you got?
This made the town rally together.
And they thought, like, maybe we gotta stop being so violent with each other.
That didn't happen, but they certainly remember the murders.
Well, then they said, let's remember these murders
There
forever. And I'm sure it's a lovely town.
it is. Yeah, I've never been.
We'll have to go sometime.
Okay. We could watch the movie too.
Yeah,
you
I'll
know,
just watch the movie. I'm
The
not gonna
Town
go
That
there.
Dreaded Sundown.
Yeah, we'll just watch the movie.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we take a look into the Florida machete murder of Athalia Ponsell Lindsley in our continuing exploration into why Florida is the way that it is.
It is a unique place with some funny stories coming out of it.
They have the magical world of Harry Potter. Or is it the Wizarding World?
What about Miami Beach, baby?
Yeah, sure. Miami Beach.
Never
great.
been.
Yeah, you don't seem like a Miami Beach type. No. Anyways, we're here to talk about a machete murder. And also, we have talked about Florida in the past. We investigated that lady who exploded in her living room.
I loved that lady.
You did?
I mean, I didn't know
You did
her.
love
It
the
was a
fact
good
that
story.
her head was the size of a tiny little teaspoon, or a teacup. Anyways, let's get into it.
Born into a life of privilege, Athalia Ponsell Lindsley was a former Broadway actress, model, inventor, real estate agent, and author. She was, according to her detractors and the Orlando Sentinel, a sharp-tongued, aggressive woman who, quote, would not have won any popularity contest, end quote. Indeed, in 1970, Athalia ran for Florida legislature and lost.
I feel like a mark of true success is when you have detractors. That's a wonderful thing.
Oh, like when you get haters?
Oh, yeah.
That's like the old way to say that.
Yeah. I would love some haters.
Yeah, I'd love some haters too.
Why don't you take a long walk down a short pier?
I like it.
yeah.
No, that's too general
Safe.
and too hypothetical. I like when it gets pointed, like, oh, I hate his stupid beady eyes.
Or like your
and
little rooster,
Yeah,
your
look
little
at
rooster
look at his
hair
little
up there.
look at that little surf wave on his head. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna get my little boogie board and surf that in the morning.
In 1973, Athalia married James Lindsley, a real estate agent and the former mayor of St. Augustine, Florida, where Athalia lived at the time. While they were married in September, by the next January, the two still lived in separate homes. Athalia was trying to sell the house she was living in and didn't want to leave it unoccupied before moving to her new husband's home. She never got the opportunity.
Now it is funny that they are both real estate agents and they cannot sell their house.
You know.
Maybe they're just not that good at their jobs, or maybe, just maybe, no one wants to live in Florida. I'm just imagining a bunch of people going, you need to buy a house here? It's like, I'm a real estate agent too. Do you want to buy a house here? And there's just a big feedback loop. It's, you want to buy a house here? Oh,
It's
I'm
real
selling.
estate agents selling real estate to other
Real estate, and like, I know you're ripping me off, but I already have a house.
On January 23, 1974, between 6 and 6:15 p.m., the 56-year-old Athalia went outside to walk her pet blue jay, Clementine.
That is cool.
She's taking her bird for a walk.
I love that. I had a wonderful little bird, I understand.
We all know you kept your bird in a freezer for 2 years.
The ground was hard, we couldn't bury him yet.
For 2 years.
No, it wasn't 2 years, it was just over the harsh Chicago winter, and when the ground thawed, we buried him in the garden.
We all know you ate that bird. We
You
all know
can't
it.
eat a parrot.
You did. Tell me
I
how you
didn't
did
eat a
it.
parrot. I loved him. I'm done talking about my parrot. I'm not entertaining this bit. Because I love that little bird.
On her porch, she encountered a man wielding a machete who proceeded to hack her to death. By the time police arrived, Athalia had been nearly decapitated. Police Chief Virgil Stewart said, quote, "She was dead when we got there. She had been badly butchered. Her head was almost cut off," end quote. Clementine, the blue jay, was never seen again.
Do you think this person maybe was Clementine's original owner and just wanted the bird back?
I did not consider that possibility. It's actually not even in my theories.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time you've glossed over things.
Well, I do think it's a bit of a jump to say, hey, that's my parrot. I think your head doesn't look good on your shoulders anymore.
Yeah, so we know you're not one to jump to conclusions.
I don't jump
or
to conclusions.
Shoddy theories.
Only if I have some facts behind it, big boy.
Take it away.
A neighbor, 19-year-old Locke McCormick, said he could hear Athalia's screams from his house. When he went to check on Athalia, he discovered her butchered body. He told police he saw a 40 to 60-year-old man wearing a white shirt and dark pants walking away from the house. A witness reported that there was blood in the grass, quote, leading all around the south side of the house, end quote. At one point, a police officer ordered the ambulance attendants to hose down the blood.
Does that fly in the face of like crime scene investigation? Or just hose everything down? Maybe.
Let's get this evidence out of here. All right, now I could think clearly.
The sheriff offered a $500 reward to anyone with information on the case. On February 17, 1974, a county mechanic named Dewey Lee said he'd searched the marshes 1 mile from Lindsley's home and discovered a machete and a package containing a bloodied white shirt, dark pants, a watch, and a pair of shoes. After Athalia's death, Frances Bemis, a 70-year-old retired department store public relations exec and fashion consultant, told her friends that she knew something about the murder. Bemis, who was reportedly a friend of Athalia's, was even said to have been collaborating with a writer on a book about Athalia after her death. She did not seem afraid when Athalia turned up slain, telling the St. Augustine Record, quote, "I think St. Augustine is the safest place I have ever lived. I go out walking at night and will continue to do so. I went out walking the same night that the murder took place," end quote.
I don't know what I'd make of that. If this grisly murder had occurred and a woman just proudly proclaimed like, well, I'm not afraid. Maybe if she knew her well, it's her way of saying like, well, she must have been into something dirty, baby. Because that kind of stuff doesn't happen around here. And let me show you.
I'm gonna go on a walk right now.
Yeah.
Frances indeed continued to go walking at night, including on November 3rd, 1974, a little over 9 months after Athalia was murdered. The next day, not far from where Athalia was murdered, a man walking his dog found Frances dead in a vacant lot.
Oh no! What?
That's unfortunately the old picture wrap on Frances Bemis.
Oh. Well, you know, she died doing what she loved.
She did die doing what she loved.
And look, if you're an old lady and this killer has already killed an old lady with something as simple as a machete, this is not the Zodiac. It's not someone who's, you know, pulling a lot of strings and putting a lot of production design into their work. It's just walking up to someone with a machete and just being like, ah!
On the flip side of that too, like
Don't challenge that.
Who are you also like making yourself a big man out to be?
Yeah.
Like you murdered an old lady with a machete? That's crazy. Wow, you must be
for you.
really dangerous, man. It's not like you murdered Macho Man Randy Savage out there. It's a fucking.
That'd be a feat.
It's an old lady.
Yeah.
So good for him, I guess.
She had apparently been clobbered repeatedly with a stone block. She was semi-nude, with most of her clothes having been ripped off, though an autopsy report found no indication of rape. An account by the New York Daily News noted that her body had been burned, as though a killer had tried to destroy the corpse.
Another thing about this one is the attempt to destroy the evidence, destroy the body by burning it.
Yeah.
And then him going, didn't work. All right.
I guess I'll just leave it
Guess
here.
I'll just leave it.
I guess there'll just be evidence.
Well, we already know what they do with evidence. Hose it off.
They didn't give a shit last time, so.
Police Chief Virgil Stewart did not believe there was a connection between Francis and Athalia's murders at the time. With 2 women violently dead in St. Augustine, Florida in 1974, it's time to dive into the theories. The first theory is that Athalia's husband, James Lindsley, was responsible for her murder. James was an easygoing real estate agent who had served 2 terms as mayor of St. Augustine. Though they lived in separate homes, James said they did not have marital problems. Athalia, however, had sent letters to her sister showing they were having issues. Quote, "Jimmy is a complete leech, a complete liar," end quote, she wrote in one letter. She also said she changed the locks of her house. There was also gossip among community members that the crime scene was hosed down to protect James's involvement. According to Elizabeth Randall, author of a book detailing Athalia's murder, James complained about how many rumors flew around the town.
Florida seems like a gossipy state.
Yeah.
Oh, what else are you gonna do there?
You're trapped by swamp and gators.
Yeah,
You're essentially just left to your own devices. Yeah, why don't you just spread some funny rumors?
whisper storm, baby.
Maybe rumors that are rumors, like you eating that bird.
If you don't stop this bit, I'm gonna.
You gonna cut my head off with a machete?
I didn't say that.
In testimony at Athalia's murder trial, though interestingly not a trial prosecuting James, more on that in a bit, James told the jury that he owned a machete resembling the one used to kill his wife. He usually kept it in the trunk of his car, using it to hack at undergrowth while looking at properties for his real estate job. After Athalia's murder, he turned the machete over to police. At that time, it was common for residents in the county to own 1 or 2 machetes used to fight back against the Florida fauna. At the trial, James was shown the machete that was used on his wife. James could not confirm whether it was his, telling the judge, quote, "All machetes look alike to me," end quote.
I think it's important to say that because I imagine people who are watching this, they were imagining Jason Voorhees murdering this lady.
Yeah.
But in reality, everyone had a machete, so it could have been Jim from down
You go
the
to the
street.
church on Sunday, the priest is standing up there with machete.
He's using it as a pointer.
yeah.
They're using it
Throwing holy water at
Yeah.
people.
They're using it to point out items on PowerPoint presentations. Everyone has a machete.
Yeah, it makes sense.
According to Randall's book, there was a gap of around 15 to 25 minutes in James's alibi. It supposedly occurred between the time James drove home from the grocery store where he had been shopping with Athalia and the time he drove back to his own home. Randall posits that James had enough time to drive to Athalia's house during that period.
Unfortunate that if you just have like a 20-minute gap in your schedule where no one sees you, suddenly you're open to being a murderer.
Yeah, that is true. It takes me about 20 minutes to cook my dinner usually. And because of that, I'm a murderer.
You're a murderer.
The second theory is Athalia's neighbor, Alan Stanford, murdered her in the culmination of a months-long feud. According to the New York Daily News, Athalia loved animals and took many in, including noisy dogs and even, at one point, a goat. The noise from these critters often disgruntled her neighbors. According to author Elizabeth Randall, both of Athalia's neighbors, the Stanfords and the McCormicks, filed public complaints about the noise in 1972, resulting in a $50 fine for disturbing the peace. Randall then describes an escalating neighborly feud in which Athalia outraged the Stanfords by cutting back their trees that extended over her property line. According to Randall, Athalia also planted bamboo across a city easement at the corner of the Stanford driveway, which the Stanfords had the city remove. At the time, Stanford was the manager of St. Johns County, of which St. Augustine is the county seat. Athalia had apparently suggested to the county commission that Stanford wasn't qualified for his job, appearing at least 4 times before the commission to complain about him.
That's a strained relationship.
That is. Yeah,
You don't want to be that way to your neighbors.
Yeah, you don't want to have a petting zoo in your house.
The thing about cutting down their tree on
Yeah.
her property, that's fine.
So you would do that.
Legally, you're allowed to.
That is
if there's hangovers, you can lop those.
I did have a neighbor who had an overhang of like a lime tree, and it was great because I could go pick a little lime.
Did you ever think about killing your neighbor?
When he didn't give me limes, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Athalia would claim that Stanford had neglected his duties of maintaining and building roads, but her complaints also verged into the personal. Randall describes a commission meeting where Athalia publicly accused Stanford of putting sugar in her Cadillac's gas tank. More saliently, she also said on October 9th, 1974, that Stanford threatened her, saying, quote, "That man threatened my life. He threatened to kill me," end quote.
Sure, he seems fishy, but it also seems incredibly risky to murder your neighbor.
Especially after all of this has been public. She has, in
For
public,
sure.
4 times complained that he's not good at his job.
Yeah.
Every human's capable of murder if you push them enough. I just don't know if this is enough of a push.
Okay.
It's true.
Is that so?
Yeah. I bet you would murder me if I pushed you enough.
Yeah, probably.
According to Randall, mere hours before Athalia's murder, Stanford had been visited by the Florida Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations at Athalia's request. Randall says they were investigating to see whether Stanford was in violation of Florida state statutes.
Yeah, that's a little fuel to the fire there.
I don't know if it's enough to push him over the edge.
It's certainly not good.
It's not good. It doesn't look great, but I still wonder.
But then when people start showing up to evaluate you,
Yeah, that is true.
you might lose it.
Yeah, I guess you can't really like tattle on her. Like, she's doing this, make her stop.
Yeah.
When Locke McCormick first heard Athalia's screams, he looked to her home and told his grandmother, quote, "Mr. Stanford is hitting Miss Ponsell," end quote, which was Athalia's maiden name. McCormick later explained that he'd assumed it was Stanford based on his clothing and the fact that the man was walking back towards Stanford's house, but he didn't see the man's face or really know if it was him. The police also noted a blood trail that cut across her driveway to a concrete wall that demarcated the divide between her property and Stanford's.
Well, that's all not looking great.
That doesn't look good. Okay, and that's a little bit more than hearsay at that point.
Yeah. Actually, this makes me wonder. Let's say you want to murder someone. Would it make sense to study them for a long time, see who's in their life, and then sort of try to disguise yourself or make it look like you're a different acquaintance of theirs? So if I want this lady dead, and I'm like, she's got a feud going on with her neighbor.
With the Stanford
Right
guy.
over there, he tends to wear these kind of things.
I'll put those on.
I'll put those on. Dress up like him, thwack-a-thwack, run through his yard.
Yeah, just roll around in the grass
Yeah.
on his front lawn.
Get that blood all around there.
Of course, they're gonna hose it off, but
It is Florida, so they're gonna hose
make
it.
sure that blood's really in the grass.
Yeah. It's close to a perfect crime, maybe. But
Maybe.
it's certainly giving you an edge as a murderer.
That is true.
The sheriff took McCormick to a hypnotist in the hopes of unlocking further memories, but the results were inconclusive.
That sounds about par for the course for investigative methods in Florida.
What do we got? How's the evidence looking? Well, we hosed it all down. Okay.
What do you want next?
A hypnotist?
Bring me a metronome.
Recall Dewey Lee had discovered a package of evidence, including a bloody shirt and a watch. While the shirt had been sitting in salt water and mud for too long to determine conclusively if the blood on the shirt was Athalia's blood type, a forensic expert was able to identify a laundry mark as Stanford's name. Ultimately, however, it was decided the mark was too faint and garbled to be conclusive.
It just seems like this guy murdered
It
this
really
lady,
does.
to me.
Is it
personally.
maybe the fact that the name on the laundry that was found that was bloodied was his? Is that what it is?
I just know none of my laundry's laying out there. One, I don't have my name on my laundry.
Yeah, what is it?
This
guy's
is
like,
the 70s, maybe
yeah.
things were different.
I don't know. Or he's Andy from Toy Story. He just writes his
that's
name
right.
on everything.
Yeah. And two, I don't think any articles of my clothing are covered in blood.
No matter what crime comes up, Shane has no bloody clothing at all.
I don't.
Not even a nosebleed?
I was in a church once. It happened in a church
Oh
once.
my.
I don't go to church. I was just with one of my friends, and he was like, "You want to go to church?" And I was like, "All right, man." I was like 9.
So you're telling me at 9 years old you don't go to church. The first time you cross the threshold into holy ground, blood expels from your nostrils.
Yeah. They ran out of tissues. Mopping that up. It was wild.
It sounds wild.
More damning for Stanford was the watch, which a jeweler identified as Stanford's. Stanford claimed that after the murder, he had discovered his watch was missing. Stanford was indicted for the murder. His friends and fellow church members raised $20,000 for his bail, and an estimated $250,000 defense fund, which would have the same buying power of more than $1.3 million today. As a quick side note, at the time of Francis Bemis's murder, Stanford was out on bail. With the money raised by his friends, Stanford mounted a formidable defense. Stanford's defense posited that Sheriff Dudley Garrett, Dewey Lee, and Athalia's husband James Lindsley had all worked together to frame Stanford. Quote, "Isn't it strange that all the deputies and trained police officers didn't know what to look for or where to look for it? And without stopping, Lee went right to the spot, walked up to the bank, and there it was. I submit to you that Dewey Lee put it out there that morning." End quote. The defense posited Dewey Lee as a scammer. While he was on the stand, a defense attorney asked Dewey, quote, "Isn't it a fact that you were looking for a spot where nobody could see you put that stuff in the swamp?" End quote.
It does seem like they're desperately grasping at straws.
Yeah, because if you were trying to frame someone, you would want it to look that. I mean, you'd go overboard.
Yeah.
You'd probably try a little too hard and make it a little too obvious looking.
This is confusing. I got a feeling it's gonna end up unsolved.
We'll see.
Key to the defense was the testimony of one Adele McLaughlin, a data processing clerk and neighbor who was riding her bike past Athalia's home at the time. Adele testified that she had seen Dewey in Athalia's yard less than 2 hours before the murder took place. After 2.5 hours of deliberation on February 3rd, 1975, the jury declared Stanford innocent. Afterward, Sheriff Garrett told reporters, quote, "Yes, I think Stanford did it. I signed the complaint against him, and I don't concur with the verdict," end quote.
There is something weird to be said about a town believing so much that this man did not do it that they literally raised $250,000 and only deliberated in the jury for 2.5 hours before saying, yeah, he didn't do it.
If I murdered someone and the entire town was like, "No, he didn't,"
He
I'd be
couldn't.
like, this rules.
He earned enough goodwill tickets
Yeah.
to cash it in for that
It's
prize
like a punch
of
card.
murder.
Like, I've been a great guy my entire life, and then you get that 10th punch, and it's like, all right,
Here's your free
here's
murder.
your machete.
Here's your machete. Have fun murdering. You get a free one.
In 1974, in a span of less than 10 months, 2 women were violently murdered by hand in the same Florida community. The person responsible for either or even both deaths is a mystery. Could it have been a disgruntled husband, a fed-up neighbor, a scheming mechanic, or someone else entirely? The answer remains unsolved.
I think it was the neighbor. Look, I'm a simple man. I see a trail of blood going to someone's house. Even if they didn't do it, come on, you're going to jail.
I think it might have been a random person.
All right,
It just seems too obvious.
okay.
There's a paper trail of their feud. Why the hell would he be that dumb?
Rage, you know, lust, rage, just building up, bursting out.
Well, I've never really gotten that angry. I don't really have that capacity.
It's building inside you. Everyone sees it. We all
That's
see it.
great. Oh man, I can't wait for Krakatoa then.
I shudder.
Hope no one's in the way.
Scary.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we look into the disappearance of Walter Collins, a 90-year-old case about a 9-year-old boy who vanished on his way to the movies.
Not the time you want to vanish. You want to vanish on your way back from the movies after having seen a lovely film.
You'll come to see that there are lots of twists and turns to this case. It's a hard one to pin down. So
Well, let's pin it.
it's gonna get weird, so let's strap in.
On March 10th, 1928, 9-year-old Walter Collins donned a lumber jacket, brown corduroy trousers, black Oxfords, a gray cap, and set off to see a movie in the Mount Washington neighborhood of Los Angeles. Walter never returned home. His mother, Christine Collins, a telephone operator, reported her son missing 5 days later on March 15th.
Well, immediately there are some red flags here. Because I'm going to do the math. And the math involves me hearing you say the words 5 days later. and
Yeah,
you
that is
saying,
true.
5?
Yeah, that is true.
That's a bit of a difference. It is 1928. I don't know if people
Just wander off.
maybe.
I mean, you strike me as a kid who wandered off. Maybe
I was a
didn't come back
wanderer,
at
bit of a
curfew.
wanderer, but I always reported back by,
The certain time.
10 p.m. or so.
Yeah.
It was a cul-de-sac. Where were we gonna go?
Also, they'd find you rather quick too. be on the lookout for a big head boy.
Big head boy, that's what they called me. My parents, yes.
Big head boy.
At that time, the city was still reeling from the kidnapping and gruesome murder of a 12-year-old girl, Marion Parker, that had happened only 3 months earlier. Tips of alleged Walter sightings started coming in from as far away as San Francisco and Oakland. In one bizarre tip, someone claimed they saw the boy at a Glendale gas station, his body wrapped in newspaper with only his head visible. Police searched for months, but still no Walter. Finally, in August, Illinois police picked up a runaway boy who matched Walter's description. The child told authorities he was Walter Collins and gave authorities a, quote, hazy story about his abduction, end quote. He spoke to Christine over the phone, and Christine paid $70 to bring her son back to Los Angeles. For the next 3 weeks, the boy stayed with Christine until she realized this boy was not her son.
See? Well, okay, well now I'm onto something. Because it took this lady 3 weeks to realize that this boy, who probably...
Oh, okay, all right, I'm gonna cut you off right there.
He's 9 years old, that's a full person.
Yeah, but here's...
And she's like, well, I'm pretty sure he's my boy. Well, he's got the same haircut, he wears the same clothes.
Yeah, but you gotta add in the grief factor. This mom thinks she lost her son, and she is now hoping for any sign of good news, and they say, this is your boy, he says he's your boy. You're gonna naturally want to believe it. But after a while, you gotta face the facts. That's not her son. You're right, he's 9 years old. He clearly has defining features at that point.
So is the idea here that maybe this was just some down on his luck boy who'd read the paper and thought, well, here's a meal ticket. I look kind of like this boy, maybe a little bit like him. I'll tell him I'm this boy.
Well, I guess we'll have to find out.
Okay, detective brain.
Christine found it suspicious that the boy was 1 inch shorter than Walter, and she used dental records to prove that this was a different kid. Christine told police, quote, yes, he looks like Walter, and in some ways he acts like my son, but still, I'm not certain about it. You see, Walter was quiet and well-behaved. He always called me mother. This child calls me Ma, and at times he is hard to handle. I certainly hope he is my son, but somehow I can't bring myself to believe it, end quote.
I love this new Walter. I'm a big fan of him.
Oh, like he...
Waltzing into the place like he owns it.
Yeah.
Hey, Ma, why don't you make me some apple pies, huh?
Ma, PB&J, now. I asked you 5 minutes ago, what's up?
The police, fixated on closing the case because of public pressure, insisted it was Walter. They conducted a series of tests to prove the boy was Walter. They had the boy find his way back home from memory and brought in Walter's pet dog, who allegedly recognized the boy as its owner. Still, Christine was not convinced.
I mean, dogs are dumb.
I love how she was like, look at his dental records, it's not him. And they're like, hey, does this doggy recognize you?
Also, puppies just like little boys. Puppies are always like, ooh, it's a little man. Let me wag my dumb tail and lick him.
Allegedly, LAPD Captain J.J. Jones told Christine, quote, what are you trying to do? Make fools out of us all? Are you trying to shirk your duty as a mother and have the state provide for your son? You're the most cruel-hearted woman I've ever known. You are a fool, end quote.
Bit harsh from Triple J there.
From J.J. Jones.
From comic book character J.J. Jones.
J.J. Jones does sound like the name given to a bad cop, like a comically bad cop. Like if he was a character in a movie, I would say this man's a caricature, no one's that evil.
Why is he calling this woman a fool?
He called her cruel-hearted too.
Yeah.
He also he made it all about him. This woman is missing her kid and he was like, what are you trying to do? Make me look like a fool and incompetent at my job? And she's like, no, I'm just trying to find my son.
Yeah, this is very rude of him.
The police then had Christine forcibly committed to the Los Angeles County General Hospital Psychiatric Ward on September 8th. While Christine sat in the psych ward, J.J. Jones again spoke to the boy police had picked up in Illinois. During that discussion, the 12-year-old confirmed to J.J. Jones that he was not Walter Collins, but instead, Arthur Hutchins.
Well, J.J. Jones, it looks like you've got egg on your face.
Yeah. Do you think when the kid said, yeah, that's not me, was he like, man, I really thought that was you? Or do you think he was like, fucking, he's like, shut the hell on, kid? What are you doing?
At that point, yeah, because now he's a fool.
No,
Fool is him now.
He has now realized the folly of his ways. I kind of love when someone gets a good dose of karma. You get their instant karma, their comeuppance. But yeah, this guy definitely deserved it. He put her in a psych ward because she wouldn't agree with him about who her son was.
Christine had been correct the entire time. The kid the police had dumped on her was not her missing son, but instead, Arthur Hutchins. After Arthur's mother died, the boy ran away from his father and stepmother. He was hitchhiking around the US when in a DeKalb, Illinois cafe, someone told him he resembled a missing boy from Los Angeles. When he was picked up, juvenile authorities were skeptical about his story, but police were so desperate to close the Collins case that they insisted on its veracity. As for why Arthur lied, the 12-year-old told authorities he wanted to go to Hollywood to meet cowboy actor Tom Mix.
I love this boy.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong. You can't indict this boy for being an opportunist. Like,
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. This is a beautiful story for him. I really love this kid's moxie because he's sitting in some rundown cafe in the middle of the cornfields. Someone walks in and says, hey, you look like this missing kid. And he goes, is that so?
where's he from?
From Hollywood, you say? Get the cops in here. Cops come in, he's like, yeah, I'm that boy. Send him out to LA. He's gonna meet his favorite cowboy person, but they're like, well, first you have to go hang out with this crying woman for a while.
That's probably why he was so grumpy.
Of course!
Because he was like, I just want to meet Tom.
Yeah.
You got this like wailing
It's like,
woman
can we
there.
please go to the movies?
Christine was released from the psych ward on September 13th and sued the LAPD. Captain J.J. Jones was suspended from duty by the LAPD, though he was later reinstated and ordered to pay Christine $10,800 for the abuse she suffered under his custody. However, J.J. Jones never paid.
Unbelievable. I mean, believable, but
Like $10,800 is actually quite a bit for that time, too.
yeah, I wonder what the inflation cost would be there.
I mean, it's definitely not cheap.
No.
And not a big shocker that JJ didn't pony up the dough.
I'm proud of her for suing him.
Yeah, the dude's a freaking set of clown shoes. He deserves it.
It seems like, there's a lot of, this is America, People press charges, people sue a lot.
But apparently the LAPD took that very seriously by reinstating him and not making him pay the amount that he
Well, we don't need to get into the practices of the LAPD.
We do not. And as we all know, we do know that you believe they are corrupt from past episodes.
That's true. I do believe it.
Meanwhile, the real Walter Collins was still missing. So with that, let's get into some theories. Our first theory was put forth by Walter's father, Walter J.S. Collins, who was serving time in Folsom Prison on robbery charges at the time. The elder Walter worked at the prison cafeteria, and his responsibilities included reporting the violations of other inmates. Because of this, he could have made many enemies, which is why he believed his former fellow inmates may have kidnapped Walter for revenge.
All right, I guess that is a theory.
That is a theory. Not my leading theory, but it is a theory.
You wouldn't just like knock him on the head or something? A guy writes you up for like taking too many mashed potatoes and you're like, I'll tell you what we're gonna do, we're gonna disappear his boy once we're out of here.
I don't think they have like the foresight to plan that out. You get angry in prison, it's happening right there and then. You're not gonna be like, I could.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm gonna wait.
You'll execute your revenge quite swiftly.
Exactly. You're gonna take like a fork and stab him right
It's the
there.
cafeteria. It's the only place where there's weapons on hand.
The second theory, one with substantial weight behind it, is that Walter was kidnapped by a pathological liar named Gordon Stewart Northcott and murdered on Northcott's chicken farm. Days after Christine was released from the psychiatric hospital and approximately 40 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, immigration officers were closing in on a 3-acre chicken farm in Wineville, California. They'd received a tip about an illegal worker who had been smuggled across the American border with Canada. The chicken farm belonged to Gordon Stewart Northcott. After he convinced his father to buy him the land in 1926, Gordon claimed he needed help running the farm. He drove to Canada to visit his sister Winifred in Saskatoon. He talked Winifred into letting him take her 14-year-old son, Sanford Clark, with him to the farm.
Chicken farms really scare me.
Why is that?
I think it may be sort of a Texas chainsaw vibe. Any sort of super rural area where there's one guy and a lot of animals.
There's some crazy stuff happening in that farm.
Probably smells.
Yeah. Just a fair warning, you're gonna wanna buckle up for this one because this is not my favorite story.
There, Gordon began to physically, emotionally, and sexually abuse Sanford. Sanford's story, unfortunately, was only the start of the horrors young men met at the hands of Gordon Northcott. Gordon had a pattern of kidnapping and murdering boys, then dissolving their bodies in quicklime. In August 1928, Sanford's 19-year-old sister, Jessie Clark, came to visit her brother on the farm. Sanford told her everything that had happened. Jessie alerted their mother, and they contacted the American consul, telling them that Gordon had smuggled Sanford from Canada. When investigators got to the chicken farm, Gordon, along with his obsessive mother, Sarah Louise Northcott, had fled.
So this is just a serial killer who may have been involved in all this.
May have been involved, and we're gonna get into.
Definitely a serial killer.
He is a serial killer, I would say, and we're going to get into how he was maybe involved.
Okay.
Police found blood-soaked ground and bodily remains around the ranch, and Sanford was safely taken into police custody. Items belonging to missing young boys from Southern California were found about the property, including Boy Scout badges, library books, and letters written to their parents. Nelson and Louis Winslow, 10 and 12-year-old brothers missing from Pomona, as well as a Mexican boy named Alvin Gotea, were among those victims whose possessions or remains were found. On September 15th, Sanford told investigators his story. Police showed him 30 photos, hoping to identify other victims who met their fate on the farm. One that Sanford positively identified was Walter Collins.
So,
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you would forget that, right?
I don't know.
And there's
I know.
no reason for him to lie.
No reason for him to lie. It's just, I guess I don't know how many people he'd come into contact with there.
While he was there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty damning though, I would say.
Yeah, not great.
No.
Gordon and his mother were arrested in Calgary, Canada on September 20th and extradited back to the United States to stand trial. Gordon initially confessed to the murder of 9 young boys, but was only charged for the deaths of 3. There wasn't enough evidence for him to be charged in the death of Walter Collins, but Gordon was nevertheless sentenced to death by hanging and was executed on October 2nd, 1930. Though Gordon wasn't convicted for Walter Collins' murder, his mother spent the rest of her life in prison after confessing to having killed Walter with an axe and burying him in a chicken coop. The notoriety from the gruesome murders was so bad, the town of Wineville decided to separate itself from that chapter of its history when in 1930, it renamed itself Mira Loma.
You ever been?
No, I haven't been to Mira Loma, but if I had,
No, you're a Southern
before
California guy.
Before this story, I would now be a little unnerved.
Well, they changed the name.
But just the idea that something so bad happened in the town that it changed its name.
Bad things happen in every town, I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's true.
We live in Los Angeles.
I'm sure there's dozens and dozens of bad things happening every day in Los Angeles. It's a dark town sometimes.
It's one of those things. No, we don't.
As he awaited execution, Gordon sent Christine a telegram saying he would tell the truth about Walter if she came to talk to him in prison. Christine went to San Quentin on the eve of Gordon's execution, but Gordon backpedaled, saying, quote, "I don't want to see you. I don't know anything about it. I'm innocent." End quote. Gordon also left several notes in his cell, some saying he'd never met Walter, some accusing Gordon's father of kidnapping and murdering the boy. A pathological liar, it's impossible to know what Gordon said was true and what was fabricated.
It's weird that this case is unsolved because it seems pretty cut and dry, but he wasn't convicted for the murder. He's saying that he didn't do it, but then his mom is saying that she did it.
He confessed to 9 other ones, though?
In some of the letters in his cell, he said that he didn't even know the boy. It goes back to that deathbed confession thing where he knows he's about to be executed. Why not just come clean?
Yeah.
So in a weird...
He's already taken the rap for...
Yeah, so might as well just come clean. But, we're trying to, dissect the mind of somebody who is clearly capable of very, very evil acts. So I don't really know if there's much merit to that. But this is, I guess, technically still unsolved because he wasn't convicted for the murder. And he's saying that he didn't do it, when I think it's safe to say that he did.
Well, we'll never know.
5 years after Gordon was put to death, one of the young men thought to have been murdered on the chicken farm turned up alive and well, opening up the possibility that Walter, too, had escaped a fatal encounter in Wineville on that chicken farm. For the rest of her life, Christine Collins never gave up hope that her son was alive, while Walter's most likely fate was at the demented hands of Gordon Northcott and his mother. What actually happened to the young boy remains unsolved.
Yeah, that was a long, windy, uncomfortable road to get to the conclusion there, but trust me when I say that I tried to make that as palatable as I could, because I would not recommend looking up this man's history, because he is far more of a monster than we presented here.
Well, I will take you up on that recommendation and
Yeah, don't look
avoid
it
it entirely.
Yes, I would do the same.
It's been a treat here today. Thank you for inviting me on another spooky little tale.
Yeah, let's go home, take a shower. I'll call my mom.
You call your mom in the shower? Hey, ending on a funny joke. Okay, see you next week.
It was a beautiful sentiment, and you ruined it. This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we take a look at the death of Vincent van Gogh, long thought to be suicide, but as recent writings may suggest, may actually be murder.
Excuse me?
What? We're gonna cover a murder on this show?
No, but of a man who long thought to have taken his own life.
I mean, he was a bit eccentric and had a history of bodily harm, so maybe people assumed it was suicide, but there are some things in here that, at least for me,
Yeah.
are fairly convincing that it may be something a little bit more sinister.
Well, I'm here for it.
What you know about Gogh?
What about, he's a Dutch guy, painted a lot, very dreamy, cut off his ear. He did that self-portrait,
Yeah, he did a selfie. All right, we're done here then,
Case
right?
closed.
Case closed. No, we got a murder to talk about, bud.
Okay.
All right, season finale. Let's do it, baby. Let's get into it.
Vincent Willem van Gogh was born on March 30th, 1853, in Zundert, Netherlands. He was the oldest surviving child of Theodorus van Gogh and Anna Carbentus. Vincent would eventually have 5 younger siblings, the one he would form the closest relationship with being his brother Theo. Despite his good grades, Vincent left secondary school before graduating. At age 16, he began his art career as an apprentice with Gogh PL-UnsolvedTrueCrime, an international art dealer where his uncle was a partner. Vincent first worked for Gogh PL in The Hague, then in London, and finally in Paris, where he was dismissed from the company in 1876, 2 days after his 23rd birthday.
Kind of a double-edged sword back then, because it's neat that you can just jump into an apprenticeship at age 16. Be like, yeah, I'm probably gonna be a legend in the art field. I'll do that.
You could still do that today, though. I feel like people start apprenticeships quite young.
But they don't really do, like at 16?
Yeah, I remember applying for an apprenticeship at Warner Bros. At 16.
How'd that turn out?
I didn't get it. So I hope you're watching this now and know what you missed out on.
Jack Warner.
Jack.
In 1881, after 5 years of wandering Europe and bouncing between dead-end jobs such as lay preacher, Vincent moved back in with his parents, who worried about their son's lack of direction in life. Theo, who had also gone to work for the art dealer Gogh PL-UnsolvedTrueCrime but had risen through the ranks to become a manager, began sending his older jobless brother money. For the next few years, Vincent would move out for periods but return to his parents' home.
It's interesting because nowadays people, people get to age like 24 and they're like, I just don't want to know, I don't know what I want to be in life.
Well, it is kind of funny that he is this 19th century millennial just wandering around.
Yeah.
Not really sure what his purpose is. And if Vincent Van, this is an aspirational tale for all you out there. If Vincent van Gogh is going through this similar struggle, you can make something of yourself.
Just out there with his brush, saying, I'll put this on something. You put it in front of me, I'll put it to it.
I feel like you can word that better.
Yeah, no, it's probably exactly what he said to people. I'll put this on something.
Give me a job, I'll put this on something.
I'll put this on something, you put it in front of me, I'll put it to it.
In 1884, Vincent, now in his 30s, wanted to start paying Theo back for all the support he had given him over the years. Vincent began sending his paintings to Theo in Paris for him to sell. Unfortunately for all parties, Vincent's work was not what the people of Paris were looking for.
I always wondered about this when it comes to famous artists. Obviously, it took them usually decades to find what made them famous. Wouldn't you say that the paintings, like their early drafts of when they really sucked, wouldn't those be worth more because it's like seeing the journey?
I don't know if they're worth more, but they're probably worth a lot.
Like a year one Van Gogh.
Yeah.
I feel like that, when you say it that way, sounds like it should be expensive.
It's a little, yeah, it did sound a little, whew.
I didn't know he had a year one Van Gogh in his house. I didn't know he was doing that well.
That's pretty good.
It looks like shit, but you know.
Well, there's a lot of that out of there for old Picasso. He's got a lot of early stuff out there.
Oh, Pablo?
Yeah, him.
Oh, you're not talking the other Picasso.
Not Ted Picasso.
Over the next 5 years, Vincent's life would appear to once again be mired by folly, as he started a failed art collective and continued his nomadic habitation of Europe. During this period, however, the style now associated with Vincent began to take form. The tones used in his paintings began to lighten. He developed his characteristic style of using short brushstrokes, and he moved to brighter, more colorful subjects, such as portraits, often self-portraits, and city scenes. Unfortunately for Vincent, the progress of his art happened during a time of declining mental health, culminating in late 1888 when Vincent famously severed his own ear and wrapped it up as a present for a sex worker. The day after this eerie occurrence.
You like that one? Yeah, he liked it. I loved it too. Cheers.
Vincent was admitted to the hospital, where he stayed until early 1889. For the next few months, Vincent struggled with his mental health, eventually checking himself into a psychiatric hospital in May. During his 1-year stay at the hospital, Vincent made some of his most famous masterpieces. In his first week there, he started painting the irises in the asylum's garden. While Vincent considered the paintings merely a study, Irises is considered one of his most iconic pieces. The Starry Night, now one of the most famous paintings in the world, depicts the view from a window in the asylum, enhanced by Vincent's imagination. In January of 1890, Theo and his wife welcomed their newborn son, Vincent Willem van Gogh, into the world, named after the infant's uncle. Vincent sent them his famous painting, Almond Blossom, from the hospital as a gift for his new nephew. All told, while in the asylum, Vincent made about 150 paintings, and by 1890, his work was finally being exhibited and receiving positive reviews.
I don't know if I agree with this narrative all the time, where art needs to come from this like darker place of misery or maybe like turmoil
Yeah.
within your head.
You don't need to be troubled to make good art.
It happens,
But
sure.
I think intense emotion or introspection can obviously fuel it.
Yeah, like a breakup or a death.
Yeah.
But it is weird that great art is often not appreciated when it comes out. And
That's
I don't
true.
know why that is.
I mean, a lot of it is, you know.
Well, maybe because like the artist's mind is more enhanced at that moment and the world is not ready for it yet, so they're ahead of the time.
That could be.
After being released from the mental hospital in May, Vincent moved to Auvers-sur-Oise, an area with other artists not far from Paris, which allowed for him to easily visit Theo's family in Paris. On one such visit in July, Theo told his brother he was considering starting his own business. This news greatly unsettled Vincent, who not only felt like a burden to his brother who was still supporting Vincent, but also worried about the impact of Theo taking this gamble on his own finances. After lunch on July 27, 1890, Vincent left the Revaux Inn where he was staying in Auvers with his easel and painting supplies. It was a warm evening, so the innkeepers and guests were enjoying dinner outside after sunset when Vincent returned. He shuffled past without exchanging any words. He also notedly had none of the belongings he left with and had his jacket buttoned all the way up despite the heat. He clutched his abdomen and limped up the stairs to his room. Gustave Revaux, the owner of the inn, went to check on Vincent. The artist was curled up in his bed, and when Gustave asked him what was the matter, Vincent replied, quote, "I wounded myself," end quote. He lifted his clothing to reveal a bullet hole under his ribs.
That's sad.
It is sad. One thing to note from this is it's a bit odd that he would take all of his painting supplies and his easel out only to then kill himself and then walk back with none of it. Like, why not just leave all that stuff in your apartment if that was what your plan was?
Who knows how these things creep up on a person?
That is true. Well, we're gonna get into it more in the theories.
Okay.
Theo arrived midday on the 28th to find Vincent in bed smoking. Vincent van Gogh died just after midnight, cradled by his brother after telling him, quote, "I want to die like this," end quote. At just 37 years old, Vincent's life and career was over, leaving behind nearly 1,300 works of art on paper and more than 850 paintings. With no autopsy ever conducted, the exact location of the shooting never identified, and a 5-hour period between the time he left the inn and when he returned unaccounted for, it's time to dive into some theories. The first and prevailing theory is that Vincent was a troubled genius who shot himself in a wheat field. According to Adeline Ravoux, the then 13-year-old daughter of the inn owner Gustav, quote, Vincent had gone toward the wheat field where he had painted before. During the afternoon, as my father understood it, Vincent shot himself and fainted. The coolness of the night revived him. On all fours, he looked for the gun to finish himself off, but he could not find it. Then Vincent got up and climbed down the hillside to return to our house, end quote.
Yeah, I could see that.
Oftentimes when people commit suicide, the weapon's right there, the means is right there, there's usually a note. It's very odd to be like, shoot myself, now let's go hide this gun.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wheat field, you know? I don't know how dense those are, but
Unless he tossed the gun, which maybe he did.
at the same time, how thorough of a search do you think he's doing if he is currently bleeding out?
Well, you'll also come to find that no one else could find the gun either.
Interesting.
Now do you understand why I think that's so weird?
Now I understand, Ryan.
Perhaps no one was more adamant about this theory than Vincent himself. Witnesses recalled Vincent saying, quote, I wounded myself in the fields. I shot myself with a revolver there, end quote. He was emphatic, saying, quote, do not accuse anyone. It is I who wanted to kill myself, end quote. Witnesses did say, however, that Vincent appeared confused as he lay dying, replying to the police's question of, did you intend to commit suicide with, quote, I think so, end quote. Vincent had also in the past morbidly joked about suicide. He once told Theo he would, quote, cease to be, end quote, if he ever felt that he had become a burden or nuisance to his brother. Could his fear of complicating his soon-to-be unemployed brother's life have driven him to kill himself one hot afternoon? While this story is the one Vincent seemingly wanted the world to hear, there are some glaring issues with it. For one, Vincent was shot in the abdomen below his ribs, which is an odd position to take if he had been aiming for his heart. Additionally, the fact that the bullet did not exit Vincent's body suggests there was some distance between Vincent and the gun, more distance than Vincent could have achieved on his own. It's also suspicious that Vincent allegedly dropped the gun so far out of reach that when he came to, he couldn't find it to finish the job. What's more, if he had actually passed out for hours after shooting himself, his wound would have been much bloodier than it was when he returned to the inn.
So if he did shoot himself, it would have been larger?
Yeah, because it had been so much time till when he got to the inn. It suggests that it happened sooner than he said it did, or like he washed himself.
Negating his theory that he fell asleep, woke back up, came to the inn.
It would have been so much bigger.
Yeah, so they're saying like he probably got shot right away, then walked to the inn.
Which would also explain then why he carried out his art supplies, because he didn't go, oh yeah, getting shots in the plans today.
Right.
So, you know, it makes sense.
Okay.
Apart from the hard-to-explain ballistics, no one knows where Vincent would have obtained the gun. Revolvers were very rare in Auvers at the time, and no one would admit to selling or lending Vincent a gun. The next day, no one was able to find a gun where Vincent purportedly did the deed. All of Vincent's painting gear, too, seemed to have vanished.
All his painting gear?
Yes, from where he left it in the fields. So no gun, none of the paint stuff that he walked out with.
Yeah.
All the other stuff that I just mentioned.
Do you think someone was aware that this was Vinny's stuff and was like, I'll get a pretty penny for this?
I feel like we would have seen it by now.
I mean, frankly, people at BuzzFeed steal lunches out of the fridges all the time. You don't think someone was just like, hey, free stuff?
True, someone did steal some of the stuff from our set.
Yeah,
Some of
we
our,
lose stuff from around here all the
from
time.
our precious props.
You think we don't notice that, coworkers?
Timmy's ball is gone.
Yeah, this is fake.
This is a sham. This is a fake ball. This isn't Timmy's. Someone stole Timmy's ball.
What if Timmy came back and took it?
I thought about that, but I don't think so.
You did think about it.
In addition to the questions the physical evidence raises, Vincent was a religious man who condemned suicide, calling it wicked and a demonstration of moral cowardice. At one point prior to his death, he even said, quote, I really did not think I am a man with such inclinations, end quote. Anytime he did have thoughts of suicide, it was always by way of drowning, saying, quote, I can understand people drowning themselves, end quote.
Suicide is wrong. I do not understand it. It'd be pretty baller to drown.
It's just a weird thing to just tack on as a button at the end of that.
Yeah, because drowning arguably seems like the
More
maybe
painful.
worst.
But why is it more morally sound?
I've heard that it is agony.
Oh God, did you really just sneak a prestige quote in there?
I don't know.
Theo also found no evidence that Vincent was planning on killing himself, finding no suicide note, but instead drafts of letters on his desk that he surely didn't want anyone to read. With so many loose ends in the suicide theory, it's time to look at another hypothesis, this one posited by biographers Stephen Nafa and Gregory White Smith. Nafa and Smith suggest Vincent was shot by some local boys, and that Vincent protected their identities. To begin, it's worth going back to get a better picture of what life was like for Vincent in Auvers. He was known to be quite eccentric, and when he would approach people in the street to ask if they would sit for him, most people retreated. His appearance didn't help matters, with wild hair, ratty clothes, and a missing ear. As is often the case, the worst bullies were the teenage boys. They would pretend to be nice to the artist to gain his trust, then pull pranks on him, like throwing salt in his coffee, rubbing chili pepper on a dry paintbrush Vincent tended to suck, and putting a snake in his box of painting supplies.
Why are these boys the way they are?
Sick pranks, dude.
The snake bit the artist.
We nailed him, bro, right? Yeah! Yeah! What a nerd!
God, I'd love to just transport them here and be like, hey, you know that guy who put a funny snake in his mailbox?
You put some salt in his coffee?
He's in a museum.
He's the museum that you're standing in front of
the
now.
museum. I can't believe boys would be that mean to a funny old man.
I can believe it. Teenage boys are the worst.
I remember being obnoxious as a teen.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
If you're pranking a stranger, I find it not as funny.
It's just mean.
That's just mean.
It's just mean.
And this is mean.
One of the boys who would tease Vincent was Rene Secreta, who said, quote, "Our favorite game was making him angry, which was easy," end quote.
Our favorite game was making him angry, which was easy.
What a little stinker.
A little piece of shit. Oh, look how red his face is getting. Ho, 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 ho.
Look at the tears.
Oh my God, what a little brat. Oh, I love it.
Rene's older brother, Gaston, was an aspiring artist who liked to hear Vincent's tales of the Parisian art world. Vincent figured Rene was just something he had to endure in order to have a friendship with Gaston. Rene, unlike his brother, had no interest in art, instead enjoying fishing and hunting. After seeing Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in Paris, Rene came back to Auvers with a full outfit of Western clothes, complete with fringe coat, cowboy boots, and added a 380 caliber pistol. Vincent started calling Rene Puffalo Pill, a mispronunciation of Buffalo Bill due to his accent, which only angered the boy more.
I love it. I love
wars.
Vincent getting back at him. Because I'm sure this guy just showed up and Van Gogh was just like, oh, Buffalo Pill. And everyone was like, oh. I just said he's Buffalo Pill. And it was like,
Oh, he did it again! Vincent does it again!
And Renee's sitting there like, you shut up, shut up.
And they're all like, blow off those pistols, Vince. Oh, what a burn.
What?
I love that kid taking his hat off, slamming it on the ground, stomping on it.
So to hear him get a little win in there,
Yeah, a little prank war.
I love it.
That's good.
Makes me happy.
In their book, Van Gogh the Life, authors Nafa and Smith speculate that the Secreta boys quarreled with Vincent around a farmyard on Boucher Road. They may have accidentally fired the gun, striking Vincent in his abdomen. Vincent then stumbled back towards the inn where he covered for the boys. The boys, in shock at what they had done, may have collected Vincent's belongings and fled the scene, destroying what evidence might remain.
It seems plausible, one, because he's a sweet man.
Yes.
And clearly he put up with this bullying for a long time. So they're being very cruel to him, and he's still just kind of like, hey, that's just how it goes.
He had,
Terrible
he had a
kids.
relationship with one of the brothers.
And that's the other thing. If he's close with Gaston, then maybe he doesn't want to point fingers to Rene.
Yeah, because it's going to ruin their life.
It would be a devastating thing.
Yeah, I buy it. I think I could get behind this.
The theory is supported by the fact that multiple witnesses saw Vincent leave the inn and head towards the hamlet of Chapenval, and not towards the fields where he claimed he'd been painting. That road leads to a spot in Oise where Rene enjoyed fishing. It's possible Renee and his brother met Vincent on their way back from Was, went to a nearby farmyard, and then the boys accidentally shot the artist. That would also make it easier for Vincent to get back to the inn with a bullet in his stomach, as opposed to a steep mile-long trek back from the wheat fields. This theory would explain a lot of things the suicide story does not, such as the odd entry point of the bullet, the lack of suicide note, why Vincent took his painting equipment to kill himself, why all that gear and the gun could not be found, and why he didn't shoot himself in the head.
They don't think that Renee would have been so upset about the cowboy clown.
About the buffalo pill.
Yeah, that he would.
I would hope not. See, that makes this story get a different kind of turn.
Yeah.
Still sweet of him to cover, but I really, really don't want to accept the fact that maybe Renee did shoot him on purpose.
In the wake of the shooting, Renee, Gaston, and their father left town. When they returned, Renee, who rarely traveled anywhere without his pistol, no longer had the gun. When asked about it decades later, Renee said Vincent stole it from him. In the 1930s, as Vincent's work was beginning to gain notoriety, townspeople told an art historian that young boys shot Vincent on accident, and that Vincent protected their identities for fear they'd be accused of murder. Still, largely due to Irving Stone's 1934 novelization of Vincent's life and death, and the 1956 movie that followed, the idea of Vincent van Gogh being a tortured genius who took his own life crystallized in the public consciousness. In a story that may feel familiar for those of us in our 20s and 30s, Vincent spent much of his life looking for a purpose, trying to find a path that could at once fulfill himself while also bringing joy to others. What he didn't know at the time of his death was that his work would be beloved by generations, inspiring countless others to pursue their life's true purpose. What he did know at the time of his death was how that fateful bullet found a home inside his abdomen. But as for the rest of us, that truth will remain unsolved.
Well, that's a lovely little story. I gotta be honest, I didn't think that the alternative would be a little bit heartwarming.
Yeah, I would say so. It definitely paints a different image completely of him in my mind, because I, like most of the public, did think he was a tortured genius who took his own life.
Yeah.
But this paints him as a very empathetic, understanding man, the underlying theme being human kindness.
Yeah, not bad. It's a good thing to try. Take it for a whirl.
Yeah, it's definitely a good way to end the season.
Oh.
See, we don't agree on anything, but right now
we
can
hate each
agree.
other.
We like this moment.
Yeah, it's
so
very fun.
you all take a cue from this, and we're all gonna be golden.